Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night to start the hashtag TQIF Friday night lineup. We're starting things off with a Tex-Trek podcast live, a doubleheader show. We have an episode of Star Trek Prodigy to talk about and an episode of Star Trek Discovery to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to go ahead and start the show, start the podcast now. I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 165th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new, and proud members of the Trek Sphere network. And yes, this is a huge week for us because for the first time since 1999, we have 2 new episodes of Star Trek in the same week. We're going to talk about Season 1, Episode 5 of Prodigy, and we're going to talk about the Season 4 premiere of Discovery.
1999 can suck it.
1999 was awesome. We had some good Voyager and DS9 that year. I think this happened the day of the Voyager Season 5 finale, Equinox Part 1. And that was like the third or fourth or maybe second to last DS9 episode. I think early June or maybe late May. I think it was early June. But
that's pretty intense.
I remember that week. I remember watching both those episodes. I didn't know it was going to take 22 years before I got to do that again. So this is just like a return to normal for this. This is what it's supposed to be like. This is what it was like when I was a teenager.
Father, I know you have a good memory. Do you remember what you were wearing then?
I was wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt because that's what I've worn almost every day of my entire life.
I was hoping for something a little bit more distinctive, like a Spock t-shirt, but we'll allow it.
I mean, I was in middle school. I was probably wearing a t-shirt with like an alien, like a Roswell alien, or like a "Take Me to Your Leader." That was kind of a big thing in like the late '90s for me.
Yeah.
It's like the alien X-Files really popularized like UFO conspiracy theory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just like the generic gray alien, probably.
See, when I hear 1999, all I can think about is the fail of the other Star franchise. So,
yes, the last time there were 2 Trek episodes in the same week, the Phantom Menace was playing in theaters. So that was also a thing going on. And I think the Matrix would have still been playing.
I was about to say, that's like the year that The Matrix came out, and I was like, shit.
Matrix came out like late March or early April, I remember. It was like right around my birthday. But enough about that. Let's talk about Star Trek. There was some other news, some less great happenings with new Star Trek streaming for our international audience.
you mean some people aren't going to be getting multiple episodes per day?
Yeah, some people didn't get any episodes this week unless you have a VPN, which is what it sucks if you live somewhere where you've been watching Star Trek Discovery on Netflix and now they've taken that option away from you and you have no other convenient option. If that happened to me, what I would do is I would go ahead, sign up for a VPN, pay the $4 a month or whatever it is, and use the VPN and use a United States IP address and suck it up and go ahead and sub to Paramount Plus, and that way I can watch every episode, the moment it comes out with nice subtitles and good captions. It's not like some shitty torrented version or anything like that. That's what I would do if I was in your shoes, but y'all do you. I'm sorry that happened. We're going to continue to cover the shows though.
Yeah. I mean, Roddenberry said that there was no piracy in Star Trek, but that doesn't mean that there's no Star Trek in piracy.
That was deep, Brian.
I don't want YouTube to shut us down, so I'm not going to endorse any of that. But
what I'm going to do, my protest is I'm like occasionally in an episode while we're talking about it, I'm going to sneer a little bit, like know that that's solidarity with our Trek brothers in Europe.
Well, the way that we're going to be handling these weeks of simultaneous episodes, really, because this is going to happen 5 times in 2022 at least, with January and the first week of February with new Disco and new Prodigy. So the way we're going to handle these is we're going to cover the Prodigy episode first. We're going to move at a little faster pace than normal, and then we're going to cover the Discovery episode. We're going to put timestamps on the podcast and then later in the YouTube video if you're watching the replay, so you'll be able to skip to whichever show you want to hear us talk about. But well, that being said, let's go ahead and get started on the Prodigy talk. I'm gonna let Brian go first, and then Dave and I will follow and give our opening statements. Just before I forget, let me say that this episode, Terror Firma, is written by Julie Benson, Shawna Benson, and directed by Olga Ulanova. And this is one of the few episodes in Star Trek that was entirely written and directed by women. And I'm just going to recap it by reading the synopsis, and then it kind of expand on that with spoilers. Marooned on a deadly planet, the crew must work together with their captive Gwyn to stay alive, except the planet isn't the only thing in pursuit. Essentially, the Diviner and Dreadnought show up to capture the ship, but the kids escape. Gwyn chooses them over her daddy, and they activate the cool proto-drive device. We finally get to see a little bit about that, and they haul ass away and escape the Diviner. So, Brian, what do you think of Terror Firma?
Well, I speculated last week that perhaps part 2 could go a bit of a ways to redeeming that episode for me, and I think it actually did. I said we didn't really learn anything about the planet or the kids or the ship or the big myth, the bigger arcs of the show. And it didn't seem like there was a lot of development on any of those points, any of those arcs as well. Here, we got to learn a whole lot more, significantly more about the characters through their choices, and they actually discuss a bit what their confrontations from last episode meant to them. And we got to learn more about the villains, with some insightful choices and encounters with them. And we got to learn some more about the PRODIGY as well. And we get some distinct character arc development with Gwyn. So yes, lots of payoff here for the setup from last week, which makes me like last week a lot more too. If I just seeing this as more of one big unit as opposed to 2 separate stories. So yeah, I was reasonably pleased with it. I'm a big sucker for found family stories, and they got to play and poke at that one a bit significantly in this one. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know if it's not sure if I liked it more than the are we going to crash into the black hole one, but I like this a lot. So
cool. Dave, what about you?
Brian, I have a question for you that relates to mine. There's just a turn of phrase or something you use to describe the difference between sort of Star Trek and Star Wars. Appealing to like emotion over like thought, or what was it you've mentioned sometimes?
The way you gain power in the Star Wars story is to be certain and to be confident. The way you gain power in a Star Trek story is to have doubt and skepticism and question and analyze things.
I think that's not quite the one that I was thinking of.
Okay.
It was more of a broader thing of like that Star Wars tends to appeal on an emotional level.
Oh yes, yeah. Fantasy tends to appeal to the emotions. Sci-fi appeals to the mind,
right,
and the intellect.
And what I'm continuing to struggle with is that this feels like Star Wars to me. Including there was even like a big ship swallowing up a little ship in this one, and a General Grievous was running around too at some point. That said, Gwyn is probably my favorite character in it, and I did like seeing the development with her. But I was I was hoping that there would be something more to the planet, a cool thing for them to figure out, or a sort of moral quandary to agonize over. Instead, the quandaries are kind of stuff that I think of as Star Wars things, like, can you forgive someone who's done something bad? Can you work with sort of a motley crew of people, like, who that would be Han Solo or Lando or whatever. It's reminding me of like watching Clone Wars, which I liked. I never got around to Rebels, but it's vibing too close for me to enjoy it as traditional Star Trek-y stuff. I think I most liked almost any of the stuff, anything that was going on with Gwyn, and I thought that had some emotional depth to it. I imagine that was probably pretty intense for a lot of younger viewers watching that. The "you chose the ship over me" sequence was really intense, but I can't say that I'm wild about it.
I think you are right. Going over it, it was definitely almost every encounter was resolved through confidence rather than skepticism and analysis. So yeah, very fair point there.
Fathery, what do you think?
Well, for me, I guess it's a mid-season finale, technically, or maybe a quarter season finale. Now that they're counting the first 20 episodes as one season, but however you want to slice it up, it ended this first 5-episode arc on a high note for me. Gwyn was also the highlight for me as well. I found her story very satisfying, despite it being a little obvious. But it was I got to see her doing the things I wanted to see her do, which is make that choice to side with the kids over her dad. So I liked that. I actually really like Dreadnought. I think visually he's interesting. I kind of like he's been described before as like Maximilian from Black Hole, but more chatty. He's more talkative. So to me, he's kind of like...
That was the producers who said that, right? Or somebody?
I think it was maybe the actor, Jimmy Simpson, who plays him. But he also kind of reminds me of Lucifer from the original 1970s Battlestar Galactica. So to me, he's like Maximilian combined with Lucifer. And I hate General Grievous in the other Star franchise. So I like Dreadnought kind of being like the superior version of like that type of character.
Dreadnought is definitely much better than Grievous. So much better than Grievous.
I like seeing him kind of being like a big badass and be scary, and it definitely checked a lot of boxes for me with some of the overall vintage pulp vibe of the thing. And I do agree that it does kind of feel more like some Star Wars elements than Star Trek elements, but that has always been what I've enjoyed about the show in these first 5 episodes, is that these are Star Trek amateurs. These are people who've never been to the Academy. They make the lower deck characters look like expert professionals. And that's something that they when the other Star franchise is doing well, it tends to have, the more amateurish. When it started being stories about the Jedi Council, or basically like, like the FBI, they're like the cops going like policing they have like the weight of the government behind it. It's like that to me was totally lame and not at all like what I pictured Jedi as a kid before the prequel movies came out. So, but when the other Star franchise focuses on like amateurs and like a ragtag crew doesn't really know what they're doing,
like a farm boy.
Yeah, so that's something that I felt like Trek had never had, and I like it exploring that with these characters. So we got some of that. We got to see Hollow Janeway being kind of cool and effective in her own unique way. There is some Klingon stuff, and I ride hard for the Klingons. I'm all about representing the Klingon Empire, so that was cool. And I finally got to learn about their proto-drive thing and see it in action, although I still have some questions, but finally they're showing us some of that stuff. So yeah, it basically ended this first 5-episode run on a very good note for me.
Father, you have questions about how a starship could contain a sun?
I mean, it's not any crazier than starships containing black holes, which is a thing in Star Trek also.
Yes, but they're micro black holes. You can have a micro black hole as long as you keep feeding it continuously. You cannot have a micro star.
Can y'all remind me where there are ships that have micro black holes?
Romulan ships run on quantum singularities.
Okay.
So...
All right, shall we hit up the deep dive?
Sure. So we're just going to go ahead and move into our episode breakdown and cover this whole episode beat by beat. But we start off picking up where we left off last week with the kids stranded on this deadly planet and separated from the PRODIGY-S1E5. Gwyn's leg is broke, and Dow is still pretty pissed at her for trying to leave. Janeway is by herself on the PRODIGY-S1E5 and has to use the non-essential systems because that's the only thing she can control to try to free the ship from the planet's vines that are attacking and prepare it for takeoff. And the kids have to get to the PRODIGY-S1E5. They have to go on this 10-kilometer trek, Gwyn doing it with a broken leg. And they have to deal with the planet terraforming itself and changing the terrain and keep them going in circles. And eventually it attacks them again. This time it attacks them as a group. So what did y'all think of this opening of the episode?
I had very strong feelings about one thing. And that was that Gwyn had a broken leg and nobody tried to immediately help her. It was bugging me so much. I was I know she's a bad person in many of their eyes, but I was like, she just said she had a broken leg. That's something serious. You got to get some bandages out.
I mean, given the life these kids have had and what Gwyn represents and how she has portrayed herself so far, I mean, we all know Gwen's going to join the good guys.
I suppose that's
from the
fair.
point of view of the kids.
Dave wants them to feel sorry for the slave masters. He wants the slaves to feel sorry for the master's daughter and take care of her.
Hey, they're old enough to recognize that she was bristling under his thing. They're not like
I'm just giving you a hard time. I feel like she kind of like patched herself up with her cool little device that we learned more about. It was an heirloom, her only thing her father gave her, the only gift.
They
tool
just
to make her more useful.
They just stood around in silence while she achingly got to her feet.
I thought Zero and Rock Talk both were kind of sympathetic. Yeah. I almost thought they were too sympathetic. I was more like, oh yeah, I'd be like Dow. I'd be pissed at her.
I liked that she doesn't need help. She just solves the problem herself. And fuck you guys, I'm just gonna walk on my own then. And I was like, you go, girl. You go, slaver daughter.
What stood out to me more in this opening was I thought that the Hollow Janeway was kind of neat. How she had to use those little robots. Oh, we learned what those were. Speaking of like this episode helping the last episode be better, we learned what the little mouse droid things are. They're the photonic ship scrubbers, and apparently they can blast off vines on Murder Planet.
Yeah, they did it fast too. They're very efficient.
Yeah, they're clearly another variation of our dot technology here. So
yeah,
but
the droid march continues.
I have to assume that Janeway more or less landed that ship. Look at how it's sitting there on the rock. If you've ever played with a Star Trek toy and dropped it on the floor, they never land like that. Ever. Not in a million years do they ever land like that.
You know, I don't know if it was this scene, but is this the one where she did the "What would the real Janeway do" comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting. That I guess that does tell you that there's some, to some degree, some limitations of this. Maybe maybe it lacks her experience, although it kind of snapped to what she would do fast. That seems like. Yeah. I mean, I think for the show, it will probably be like she'll be highly efficient when they need her to be highly efficient. She'll occasionally be a little bit like more robot-y when they need her to be a little bit more robot-y.
I liked that she shut down the replicators that no one was using, so the little LED screens wouldn't be lit up to get a little extra power. That is such a computer thing to do. No person would ever bother to take the time to shut down the replicators under these circumstances. But a computer would absolutely say, oh yeah, I can squeeze another tiny bit of energy out if I switch those flashing.
They remind us about the mystery device when Janeway's trying to take power away from it and the ship's computer won't allow her to. And so also with this episode working in tandem with the last episode as one hour story instead of 2 half-hour stories, having Zero's vision last week involve the engine and his obsession with like learning what it is, that kind of makes a little bit more sense now because it helps remind us that thing is around and kind of builds to the climax of this episode.
they showed Chekhov's gun and they fired Chekhov's gun in this episode.
Yes.
And Chekhov's gun had a star inside it, as it turns out.
Yes. Chekhov's PRODIGY The
Pavel Chekhov's gun.
Yes. We get a proper attempt to have a phaser fight.
Yeah, and I like that they decided to name the planet Murder Planet, because that does sound like something teenagers would come up with.
I guess that also makes it...
Or gamers would absolutely do that, even if they're in their 40s.
I guess that makes it, that fits Class M for murder.
M for murder.
That was even a joke that we made last week. They make the same joke. I guess they listened to Tex-Trek, but they were saying
that's very cool. That's very cool.
No more M-class planets. So
I want to say hi to Gwyn and let you know that I probably would have tried to bend your leg up. I would have. That's just basic sentient being stuff, y'all.
But Gwyn got to be the cool, smart one who uses the fire tactic on the Watcher. It's one of the robots from the first episode, but like a really big one, like one of Dreadnought's little minions. I wasn't sure what it was the first time I watched this, actually, but when I watched it the second time, I heard one of them call it Watcher. I was like, oh yeah, it's one of those things. But this must be like the most flammable forest ever. And I know like some forests do forest fires are kind of an easy thing, but like instantly, like the whole world is on fire. Like all of Murder Planet is ablaze all of a sudden.
Yeah, she used her special attack, I guess. They were all about phasers, and she made a fire spear.
I have to assume that the phasers are locked on stun, or at least that the kids don't know how to change the settings, because a phaser on a higher setting would have absolutely kicked off a flame if you shot it into something flammable.
No, Dal says that. Dal says something like stupid stun setting. So that's
okay.
They put that in there in the dialogue.
Yeah. So, which Janeway kind of hints that they're locked on stun when she first hands them out at the beginning. So.
Why is there always a cliff?
Because the planet is reshaping itself to screw them, so actually makes perfect sense that there are cliffs everywhere.
If they're gonna have cliffhangers.
I was just trying to connect this into our Discovery episode we're going to talk about in a moment, but
I can't explain that one nearly as well as this. This actually made quite a bit of sense when taken in context of the planet rearranging the mountains. That's a lot of energy, by the way. I don't know what the planet's goal is, but it is consuming vast amounts of energy to harass these kids.
Yeah. Well,
a little bit of an explanation would have been nice.
Medusan is probably really tasty. There's a lot of energy in a non-corporeal being.
Whenever there's something sentient or semi-sentient, I think I always want to see some kind of communication with it, or learn more about it.
Zero tries that. He says maybe I can communicate with it I'm sorry, the non-binary character Zero attempts to telepathically communicate with the planet, and then they say like, oh no, the planet just wants to eat us.
Yeah, I was dissatisfied with that.
Yeah, I'll grant you that would have been a good point to make this feel more Star Trek. That would have been the one thing we didn't get to learn more about in part 2 that would have made the show feel a lot more like Star Trek.
And I think you could have probably had whatever they might learn about whatever kind of sentient planet they wanted it to be, still be revealing of their characters, but I think. Well, go ahead.
They had a two-parter. There's no excuse for not developing rationalizing the planet a little.
That's what I'm saying.
No, that's fair. Dave.
Although, by the way, those look Dal looks cool in the stills there with his double phaser things. He's like the John Woo. There we go. It's the John Woo shot.
Captain Jonathan Archer did that way back in 2001 in Broken Bow.
He was ripping off John Woo too.
Where's our love?
Father, shall we move on to our next segment?
Sure, Dave. Tell us what happens after they fall off the cliff.
Right on. So acid rain starts to pour down, and the kids take shelter in a crashed Klingon ship where they compare their Murder Planet-induced visions from the previous episode. Dal and Gwyn share a moment under the stars and come up with a way to find their way to the PRODIGY-Star.
So
And I liked their scene, by the way. I liked getting some downtime, and like to some degree, since it is a sort of obvious arc of some level, at least at this point, of forgiveness for what she's done. I was pleased to see them moving to it.
Yeah. Saving everyone's lives, that's up there with flossing. So
yeah, that's what, like in screenwriting, you call that save the cat, right? When you make the audience cheer for a character by showing them save a cat from getting hit by a truck, or something like that. That
right
makes them.
Previous episode, she saved Murph in the previous episode. I think
she saved the Murph.
So, yes, that's our new. Our new metaphor for it, or
did she really save the Murph? Would Murph really have been in that bad a shape if Murph had stayed on the ship?
Murph is tough. Like when it starts raining down the acid rain, when the acid rain is coming down, he sticks his tongue out to like eat it. Like he's
hardcore.
Murph goes hard.
I guess if you eat furniture, you're pretty durable.
And I hope these kids keep the mek'leth, the Klingon sword that they find, because I think that'd be cool to show up in future episodes. But honestly, they might leave it behind later. We see a Jankum Pog playing around with it later. But yeah, I liked the stuff inside of the Klingon bird of prey. It showed them bonding a little bit. It kind of made the stuff from the last episode a little bit more meaningful to me. Brian, you mentioned last week how it wasn't that insightful to know Rock Talk likes to play with like cuddly little bunny Pokemon creatures. But here, they give a little bit more depth to it when she says, those things liked me. They weren't afraid of me. They didn't treat me like a monster. I was like, oh, okay, that kind of adds more meaning to that. Or Zero talking about like his obsession. I guess Jankum Pog's still just like a hungry fat dude, but
yeah,
that's his role. He's there to be the buffoon.
Father, can you throw up Jill 47's comment about Murph down there?
Sure. Jill, thank you for joining us tonight. She says Murph is tough about chemicals, but draws the line at crashing starships.
Yeah.
Well, we all have our boundaries.
That's legit. That's legit.
And Santi Santo says, acid opens your mind. Murph knows it.
He was putting the acid tab on his tongue. There's that Star Trek getting crazy there.
I mean, Star Trek had a planet where the grass was full of acid, so
sure. I'm just saying, this is a kid's show, Father.
yeah.
But yeah, I liked that they had their sort of moment where they kind of talked about what their visions were. Everybody opens up a bit emotionally and lets down their defenses a bit. So I think that's good to see every once in a while. Not everybody can have like a front all the time.
Speaking of boundaries, Zero needs to work on telepathic boundaries, because they read Dow's mind and just told everyone like, oh, Dow wanted his family but didn't know what they looked like, so the planet couldn't really show them to him, and he clearly didn't want to share that with everyone. And then Jankum Pog is so like, he's so dumb. He's insensitive because he's dumb, not because he's malice. But he's just like, oh, that doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah, it's a little bit of this is not an uncommon thing to do, but like it moves the story forward. B, it's kind of I don't know, sometimes funny, even though it's arguably a violation. It's what Drax did in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies a few times.
And Zero has done that throughout. Zero, I think Zero can't turn it off. I think Zero just automatically picks up on some of your thoughts, no matter what, because they're constantly, saying things that people are thinking. I
forget, has anybody pushed back much other than saying
yet.
Like Zero?
That hasn't happened yet, but I think it might eventually.
Yeah. It's gonna come out when if they do, somebody gets a romantic thought for somebody and Zero blurts it out. That's when they're gonna be like,
they're clearly gonna do they're gonna do romance between Dal and Gwyn. I think that's like when they have them like sitting next to each other, look at the stars. Like, you only do that if you want to eventually build like a love story between the characters. There is one part where they have like their faces like really close, like within like kissing distance. So I think they're for sure headed in that direction, which is the typical thing to do anyways.
Yep, the only exception in the history of time was in Pacific Rim, actually.
Yeah, that was an unusual one where the leads don't kiss each other at the end.
They got very, very close, and then I think it was a hug. We won.
And we see that they remind us also that Dao, I guess, speaks genuine English. He speaks actual Federation standard, and Gwyn gets some of the words wrong, like constipation instead of constellation.
Yeah,
a cheap joke, but it does kind of remind us of that part of his character.
Yeah, and I do like his, his feelings of isolation. I think are pretty well portrayed. I think that's when the series is more emotional and less kind of intellecty than I'd like. But I think they're doing pretty good at some of that stuff. I think his internal thoughts and Gwyn's, the two deeper characters, they're doing a good job with.
Yeah, it's still very emotion centric, but it's a more mature emotional thing than some of the rest of the show. Mature isn't like sophisticated, but
I would also say that there is more emotional intelligence on display here than in the other franchise's Clone Wars in most episodes.
They do some intelligence here though. As far as like solving the problems and winning the day, is they figure out, they remember, oh, the stars are fixed points, we can use the stars to navigate.
Yep.
That's not incredibly original, but it is them using their heads and not their hearts. So
yeah, and I mean, from the point I thought it was a little basic, but I'm like, they're kids. All this stuff is new to them. We're 40-something-year-old.
If you're a 16-year-old, if you're a 16-year-old lost in the woods and that occurs to you to like, oh, I can use the stars to find my way home. That's pretty smart thinking, right?
Yeah.
When I was years ago, when I watched some Pokemon cartoon episodes, because I was dating someone who watched Pokemon cartoon episodes. The thing I actually liked about it was this that the kids were kind of always out camping. Basically, they were out like having adventures, camping, and catching Pokemon and having adventures. And it's a good format. That's kind of what they're doing here. It's also like Lost in Space vibe, which is there's threats, but they kind of don't play them up so hard that you kind of don't lose the notion that it would be kind of cool to be doing what they're doing, at least somewhat. Maybe not to think you're going to die.
I mean, the show is supposed to sell kids on the idea that being on a starship is fun. So we can't make this new Battlestar Galactica where everyone's like, oh my God, my life is such a mess.
Well, Brian, do you want to tell us what happens when the baddies show up and attack?
All right. The Rev 7 arrives at Murder Planet. Dreadnought pursues the kids, and the Diviner beams down to claim the Proto-Star for himself.
Hey, somebody does know how to beam.
Yeah, that was the first transporter usage we saw in the show so far, is when the Diviner beams down. And this is also when I think they might lose the Mechleth, so that makes me sad. But I thought that was a cool reveal of Dreadnought when Jankum Pog is like, oh, which one of you imagined him? This is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man at the end of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Like, one of y'all thought this guy up. He's not real. And then he shoots the Mechleth out of his hand, and then Jankum Pog's like, oh no, he's real. But this is what I was talking about, like the satisfying things. Like when Gwyn takes a stand. I like that they didn't draw it out. It's a little bit more. It's kind of like a modern TV writing where things I think are a little bit more expedient. They don't like draw things out for an entire scene. When things are obvious, they tend to happen quickly. Right. And here, like Gwyn goes ahead, without hesitation. She's like, no, don't kill them. We can leave them behind. I'm not going to let you murder them. And to the point where Dreadnought has to like shoot her in the leg to disable her, and then the kids run away and hide under a tree like in Lord of the Rings. Which they did the same visual gag on Lower Decks recently in the Magato episode, Magato Gamato, and they're hiding under the tree from the Magato, like in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so I guess I feel neither here nor there on it. I don't really like homages, but I don't feel also like Lord of the Rings has a copyright on hiding from scary people.
I found it a little like. Feels like we're moving from homage to rip-off, but okay.
Yeah, you're right. It might have crossed a bit of a line there.
I mean, if you're running through the wilderness like this, you're either gonna have to hide behind a tree or behind a rock. So there's only
Well,
so many
but
ways
it's
to make that look cool.
The way they composited the shot to
Right.
and the hiding spot and everything to make it look, it's Lord of the Rings, you know.
Yeah, that sort of, it's a group hide and a very similar visual dynamic.
Well, don't either of y'all watch any Russo brothers Marvel movie with the commentary on, because the entire time you watch it, they're just gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we took this shot from Rocky 3. Oh, we took this shot from The Longest." This is like that's all they say the entire commentary.
Yeah, they shouldn't be saying that shit. I like the Russo brothers, but yeah, I do think that if I were to know that a shot was based on something else, it would bug me.
I don't mind it as long as I have to dig to figure it out. But when it's slapping me in the face and I'm not even that big of a Lord of the Rings fan and I still can't help but notice it, I feel like that might be a bit too. It'd be like if, oh, look, we've got laser swords, you know. Yeah, I wonder where that came from. So.
Dave, you said that the Gwyn stuff stood out to you also in this episode, and you said you felt sorry for her at the beginning for having a broken leg. So you must have really felt for her when she's about to be devoured by these vines, and her dad is like, I don't know, do I want to help my kid or do I want to get the ship?
Yeah, she's actually both under a physical and emotional assault there. She gets the worst of all worlds, and I think it's so far like the harshest sort of harshest emotional scene that they've had on the show to date, and really well done.
I still felt more of a kick in the heart when they, in the previous episode where she realizes it's not her dad because he's being nice to her. It was like, oh, that's so fucked up. But I will say they managed to have this poor girl encapsulated entirely with tentacles, and I didn't think about hentai once because the emotional drama is all father-daughter stuff. And I was like, very well played, man. You managed.
She's underage. Brian, don't bring. Yeah, no, I'm sure that doesn't stop like Japanese animators, but I guess we could also mention the Evil Dead if we wanted.
I didn't think about that. I was like, you know, it wasn't until like we were talking about it here that I finally crossed my mind because they'd recontextualized the scene so well that it wasn't just a woman being attacked by tentacles. I was like, damn, they absolutely leave Gwyn that time. They all just take off running and leave her on the ground in front of the bad guy. Not just, well, we're going to abandon you in the woods, but
she did tell them to. She's shooting. She said, y'all run. I'm only going to slow you down.
But still, I was like that. Ooh,
they didn't abandon her. They didn't abandon her. They just went to like regroup and come back and rescue her. That's what they did. Thomas Hill in our live audience, he says Gwyn is learning to accept the help of others, and Dow is learning that he doesn't have to control everything and share.
Yep. No, good point. I like that the planet, how they use the planet to show how the diviner is a monster, and the twist about it not really being the Protostar, I thought was fantastic. That
was very well framed and set up, where the way they cut back and forth between Janeway and opening that ramp in the hangar bay, and you think that it cuts from that to the diviner walking up to the ship, so you think he's about to enter the ship, but then you see like, no, Dow is entering the ship, the diviner is entering one of the planet's traps. And I thought that was cool, and also just like the diviner's the conflict, his internal conflict, that like he did do an extremely terrible thing and like leave his kid to die, but at least he felt bad. He was sad about it. So
it's the Thanos approach.
Exactly.
I kind of feel like there's no coming back from that scene.
Oh, there's not, but no. It's clear he's not just he does contain emotions. He does not think of her as absolutely nothing. He is a horrible father.
He cannot fully overcome his genetic evolved imperatives to protect his young. Yeah.
Do you think Luke Skywalker could bring him back though?
Luke Skywalker
only if the diviner dies in the process, but
okay.
Maybe
Skywalker can bring back anybody except Kylo. So.
By the way, did we with all the stuff going on? Did I can't remember? Is there staticky shit in the air? The usual interference that like Janeway couldn't just beam them back.
No, they haven't. We don't know why, but they haven't used the transport. If the Proto-Star has a transporter, they haven't used it at all yet. But we don't know why. They haven't.
We were thinking that they're waiting for some big reveal.
Right.
There's no way it doesn't have a transporter.
No.
So it's weird that they haven't used it yet.
Well, Janeway says there's major power problems on the ship, and that she only has the only things working are non-essential systems. So I think in Star Trek jargon, that means the transporter is one of the things that the roots have disabled.
You would think it would have at least been mentioned before, but if they mentioned it. It hasn't been brought up, so if you're a younger viewer watching this, you may literally not know about transporters. But that's the thing is like they're building it up 6 episodes in, and we haven't seen it. It's kind of weird. What big thing is going to happen with it will justify it?
Yeah,
it's also.
Dave's really upset about the lack of transporter usage in this show.
It is a little weird that if they're
it is the most common tool on Star Trek.
If they're building the transporter up for a big reveal, the way they just have the diviner beam down without even showing how this works, he has to get into a booth and there's some buttons pushed and he's up, no, he just I'll beam down, and the next shot he's appearing on the planet like everybody knows how this works, in which case, why are they building it up like that? So I thought that in hindsight, that is a little odd.
It's a wait and see thing. They might like in episode 6, they might meet Captain Chakotay in the Starfleet ship, and Chakotay's gonna be like, "Oh, I see the ship when it crashed on your mining asteroid, the transporter systems were damaged. Here, let me fix that real quick. One of my engineers will have it up and running tomorrow." And they'll be like, "Oh, what's a transporter?"
Yeah.
I think that they have to beam a whale on board, or I will not be satisfied.
A humpback or a beluga, because they're both pretty big in Star Trek now.
Whatever fits in cetacean ops, I don't know.
Well, let's talk about the ending of the episode. They get the Proto-Star back. They do the rescue with the rope instead of the transporter to get Gwyn. Instead of just beaming her out of the vines, they hang a teenager off of the ship with a rope and pull her out.
They can't actually, they're, we're not quite there. I'm like, dude, just lower the ship a couple feet. Come on, just lower the ship. This is not.
But it's not a helicopter, Brian.
They do what the diviner wouldn't do, and they save her, which is the important thing. And then they warp away from the planet and escape the Rev 7 by activating the Proto-Star's Proto-Star powered Proto-Warp.
Well said, Father. Well said.
Hopefully that is not a prototype for more sentences like that to come.
No, I gave myself the tongue twister, but the diviner looked cool when he leaped out of I don't know what the gravity is on Murder Planet, but when he leaped out of the vines, it was like, oh yeah, this guy's actually a physical threat. Eventually, when someone has to do again, kind of a Star Wars-y type thing to do, but someone's going to have to do a sword fight with him or something at some point. Discovery does that type of stuff all the time too, but yeah, he's going to be a physical threat to somebody eventually.
I want to take that single capture, that single panel screen grab you had of him leaping and just go, whee!
I was just like, dude, you could just beam up. Why are you jumping away? You have a ship in orbit.
Because he's pissed. He's got. Do you ever get that anger adrenaline? It's like he's got that going.
Yeah, I beam up and bomb the planet. He leaps over and the henchman says Gwyn has betrayed us, which I think is a bit of a leap on the henchman's part. All she said is, please don't kill these children. And she's been soft on the prisoners for it's kind of implied quite a while now. So I can only take this as the henchman is trying to stir up shit between the two of them by exaggerating the degree of her disagreement from, please don't kill the prisoners please don't kill these children to, she's betrayed us. I thought that was a little...
I think he's probably, part of being robot computer brain. He's probably very black and white. I
suppose that's true. Yeah,
there's no room for a gray area with him.
Either way, it nicely illustrated his character that he is either very black and white or conniving.
I want him to give like a numerical value. She's like, this is a betrayal level 11.
Oh, in the first episode in Lost and Found, there is a rivalry. There is kind of a rivalry between Dreadnought and Gwyn
For
that
the
I forgot
approval.
about. But yeah,
For the
they're
approval of
both
the
trying to
diviner.
be the number one servant of the diviner, of our diviner as they call him. Which I like that. That's interesting that he's like indoctrinated all of his people he rules over. They call him our diviner. I think even like Dow and the other kids call him our diviner.
Yeah, it's very it's like biblically sounding.
I would if I was hanging out with him, I would call him y'all's diviner.
Have they said what he divines?
No, we don't know much about him actually. He's kind of one of the mysteries of the show. But
I mean, a diviner is a thing you do. You know, you divine information or knowledge, or
you can also
something.
divine water and stuff like that.
Yeah. I was a touch disappointed that we don't really get to see the "so do we want to go and save Gwyn" conversation, because I think that would be wonderfully illustrative of the kids and where they are in their relationship with her, and just give everyone a chance to say a quick line about it. You know, Janeway as well. And instead, Janeway just says, "Where's Gwyn?" And the next shot is they're rescuing her. And I thought, you know, I would have loved to see that conversation. Not like stretched out over several minutes, but every kid gets a chance to say one line about how they feel about, you know, sticking around in this hellhole and potentially risking their lives to go back and get her. And I missed that convo. That's probably the biggest disappointment of this whole episode for me, is that we didn't get to see that. I think they wanted to try to keep it as a surprise, but that the kids were going to rescue her. But it's so obvious that that's where we're going that I'd rather see how we got there. I think would have been more interesting than them trying to attempt to surprise us with it.
I mean, they had showed this entire episode that like Jankum Pog and Rock Talk were kind of forgiving of Gwyn. So to me, it never seemed like something that would be like a big debate.
It's not the, you know, I can kind of guess how it goes, but I would have liked to actually see the big moment, you know, where it's like, all right, we either leave her forever or we're going to rescue her, and we're really committing to this right now.
I imagine that it's probably because you think that's the big moment, but the big moment they really intend is like in an episode or two.
Proto warp. The big moment is the proto warp. That's what I wanted to see.
So apparently that tiny little ship is carrying a star. Not just a brown dwarf or something, apparently, but a full-on proto-star of some sort.
Yeah.
So
one of our viewers, our friend Aaron Harvey, aka Geek Filter, who's here tonight, he has speculated that the ship might be from the future, that's like fallen back in time or something, and that's why the diviner was after it. I think he wants the proto-star drive for whatever nefarious purpose, but so that might explain like why it's kind of advanced technology. But yeah, it's some, I don't know, a micro star, a shrunken star. It's not really like what a proto-star is. I know proto-star is just kind of like, it's a young star, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like it just like recently, relatively speaking, recently accumulated the critical mass to turn into a star, but it's,
it could be
it's
some
something
sort of
I have
weird
questions about. I want to know more about it.
I mean, there could be some sort of dimension, you know, Stargate portal to the proto-star, the actual proto-star, and that's why they have to keep supplying the power. Is once the little Stargate closes, it's a huge pain or impossible to reopen.
It takes two warp cores to keep that thing.
Yeah, well, 50% of the power from two warp cores.
I just know it looked pretty cool when it went into hot rod mode, and it got turned up.
And it was the satisfying emotional moment for me from Gwyn when the diviner, you know, he wants her to surrender the ship. He's like, you know, I think you'll do the right thing, and she's like, yeah, I am going to do the right thing. And she's the one who gets to sit in the captain's chair. They give her like the big moment. She's the one who gets to engage the proto drive, and the third nacelle pops out and it hauls ass, and the diviner looks so sad at the end And I kind
It's
of
like he's
laugh.
Is it Captain Styles in Star Trek 3?
Yeah.
He got to
Kirk,
be
if
Captain
you do this, you'll
Styles.
never sit in that chair again. But
Only in this case, they had the transwarp drive instead of Styles.
Yeah.
Yes.
but he says she's gone. And I honestly don't know, and I like the ambiguousness of this. Is when he says she's gone and he's kind of heartbroken and defeated, is he talking about the ship or his daughter? I love that. I love the ambiguity of that.
Ship, given
That's
the
a good
previous
point.
data that we have seen, data points point towards ship.
But it's interesting. I think when I watched that, my mind immediately assumed that he was talking about Gwyn, just because I think I forget that ships, the tradition of ships being called she. But yeah, his particular melancholy there seems more likely to be for the ship, knowing what we know.
Yeah.
Oh, and our live audience, Smart Smear, says, it feels like the first 5 episodes were the prologue and the show is just about to start now in a good way. Yeah, this is definitely kind of like the introduction of the characters, establishing the status quo. I think now they're more gelled as a team, as a crew on the ship, and I think they're going to be going to the Federation, going to Star. I think that's what we're moving towards now, is there's eventually going to be some type of connection with Starfleet based on things outside of the show that we've heard about. Robert Beltran's coming back as Chakotay. Jason Alexander is going to be some like Vulcan doctor or something. There's like all this casting news we know.
I assume they'd still be off like in the hinterlands of the Delta Quadrant or near there, or even if it's the border.
Well, they're close. They're on like the Delta. They're on the Beta Delta divide, but they're also on an extremely fast ship. So
that's true. That's an interesting point. But yeah, my assumption was they'd essentially be out in the space wilderness for, I don't know, most of the show, much of the show. And I bet they still will be, but they will engage with the Federation in some way.
Yeah. And I think by the end of the season, like they may not be in Federation space, but by the end of the season, I'm predicting they're going to be in uniforms as cadets in training in full contact with Starfleet.
That's a bold bet, sir.
The Hageman brothers have said like the uniforms are coming. So.
No, okay, no, that's good actually.
It's going to get the show's going to get more and more Star Trekky the longer it goes on.
So they're going to go places that Neelix and Kess never got to go, or 7 of 9.
Yes.
That notion that this is essentially what we have seen is sort of the prologue is kind of potentially good for me because it hasn't quite gelled for me yet. And I remember the same thing of, say, the first 2 episodes of Discovery. Notably, I was, not on board. So
that's every Trek show for you except for Picard, right? That's the only one that you liked right off the bat.
I mean, are we going all of the newer stuff? Yeah.
Of all of them ever, right?
No.
Oh.
Like Deep Space Nine, I think when I saw it with adult eyes, got pretty much just going. And I liked actually the opening of Enterprise. I thought that was a good premise, even though they were not great at utilizing it.
It was a strong first episode, though, for sure.
Yeah. I did. At first I was kind of like, why does the diviner think Gwyn has any control over this ship? She's all like, surrender and your friends will get to live or whatever. And I'm like, dude, she's still their prisoner. She's got a broken leg. They chose to rescue her. That doesn't mean she's suddenly in charge.
He saw her. There's basically a button on that captain's chair that says, fuck you, Dad. I'm taking the ship and getting the hell out of here. And he watches her press that button.
But
we see his reaction to it.
We see acts like this before before he knows that pressing that button is on the table of things that could happen. And then I went back to, the henchman said that she betrayed us. So he's probably operating under the henchman's thing of, no, she's totally gone over to their side. Whereas if he hadn't had that report from Dreadnought, he might be a little more like, release my daughter and give me my ship, But yes, it was a terribly badass ending. I like the fuck parents, found family for the win message that you need in all good children's programming.
And that anti-authority vibes that is also something I feel like Star Trek misses out on. Because, the Federation and Starfleet are like the ultimate authorities, and it's all very good and utopian, but I need some anti-authoritarianism. So, like, I like that Prodigy can give us that.
Yeah, the best parents are absent parents. If their parents are present, they're just problems.
As a quick aside, over in the comments, Jill asked how they're going to justify the kids keeping the ship if they're in the Alpha Quadrant. And I think that's an interesting question to see them answer. I'm sure they had to have at least been considering that if they do get more. Yeah. The closer they get to civilization, the more likely it seems like they'd be like, maybe these kids shouldn't be driving this this starship.
Yeah, we need to take the keys away from them. Do either of y'all have any final thoughts on this episode before we start our disco talk?
I think I don't. I think I said my piece.
Yeah. No, I got it. Everything I wanted to say is done. So.
Okay. Well, that was a good 5-episode run in my book. I'm looking forward to seeing more, and we will in 2022. And I think the first week of January, we get the beginning of the next 5 episodes. So
not too far out. I guess what is that? A month and a half ish, a little less.
Until then, though, in the meantime, we have Season 4 of Discovery to talk about. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about the Season 4 premiere titled Kobayashi Maru. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to give our opening statements. We'll go in the opposite order this time. But before we start that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this episode. It was written by Michelle Paradise and Jenny Lumet and Alex Kurtzman, and directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. So basically like the highest head honchos on the show wrote and directed this. And I'm going to recap it by reading off the official synopsis, then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers to offer a quick recap. After months spent reconnecting the Federation with distant worlds, Captain Michael Burnham and the crew of the USS Discovery are sent to assist a damaged space station, a seemingly routine mission that reveals the existence of a terrifying new threat. And yeah, so basically what that is the new threat is this gravitational anomaly that is just sending off this strong waves of supergravity that are not only like knocking space stations out of where they're supposed to be, but also destroying planets, as Book's planet of Quajon is destroyed, killing his nephew and brother and all the rest of his family and his civilization. And so there's like this new danger present. I'm gonna just give my broad thoughts first, and then we'll go to Dave and Brian. But I was lucky enough I got to see the virtual premiere of season 4, and I've seen this, and I always said I would never do this. If I've ever had access to like future episodes, I don't want to see them because I don't want to. I want to be in like the headspace of where the majority of the audience is week to week to week. But I did watch the second episode of the season 2, so I'm gonna have to be vigilant not to talk about any of that stuff. I can only talk about the first episode. However, I did have a good time with this, and part of it might have been just like the virtual premiere and getting to watch it with like other fans that are in the chat online talking about it. But there is a lot of the things that have bothered me with Discovery. It kind of looks like are hopefully being addressed this season. I liked the new uniforms, the look more than I thought I would when I finally got to like see them in motion. I liked a lot of the weirdness of this. I like seeing the optimism. I like seeing them lean into ideas like, we're exploratory, we explore, we promote science. There's not that like action military vibe from season 1 of Discovery. It seems is totally absent. Season 3 started with them running around shooting guns at the regulators. We didn't have like any of that stuff. So I kind of like that this was more of like, oh yeah, that classic kind of peaceful scientific Starfleet. The anomaly stuff, when we got to that part, though, that did kind of bug me because I don't want like another repeat of like the burn and like this big mystery box and we got to solve this. However, I'll say this about the second episode of season 4. When I saw that did kind of make me feel much better about all that type of stuff.
That's good to know.
I'm actually pretty optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic about how they might handle it. But yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. the opening that I'm sure we're going to talk about. I think it might be divisive for some people, but that worked. Seeing the happier, just like a happier, more optimistic Starfleet, it really got the season off on a good foot for me. But Dave, how did you feel about it?
I like sad Burnham better than happy Burnham. No, I like. Actually, it's funny. The opening got off on a bad foot for me. I did not like their negotiations, or rather, their not even negotiations. They were essentially delivering dilithium. It was like a mission of mercy, and I thought that was a very cool idea. But it felt to me, there are just those times when Star Trek Discovery feels too much like the Kelvin movies to me, and this reminded me of that goofy ass opening with at least two of the movies have opened with them with wacky alien stuff, and them being chased and blasted after their stammering attempt to explain that what they were doing, like they were, I don't know, they felt like cadets to me, or like Kirk in the Kelvin movies where he doesn't really care about Starfleet stuff. And I really did not like that. Once the episode kind of got rolling and I saw Starfleet and I got to see Saru back, I got to see the new uniforms and Tilly promoted, and like a lot of other stuff, I really liked that vibe. I think I don't like the kind of goofier stuff about like that Kelvin actiony stuff. Is a sticking point for me always. I'm pretty sure I saw a Tribble crewman. We'll talk about that later. And then it like sort of broke my heart a little bit in the end, because yes, like you, Fathery, I was fearful of. I don't like their big season wide mysteries. They're always disappointing to me, and so that the anomaly in this one was not something that thrilled me. It's if you say that there's something in episode 2 that will make me feel better about that, woohoo! I'm into that. So it was a roller coaster ride for me, but there was definitely a lot of stuff I dug in it, and most of it was that sense of, moving forward and having seen Starfleet rebuild and in this sort of positive way represent how we would like to see a superpower be. I always want to at least see Starfleet putting their best foot forward, attempting to do that, and I got that vibe in this one. So I did like the optimism overall. Brian, what you got?
Especially the opening, but really the whole thing felt very much in the mold of a Kelvin universe story and style and tone. I think I like this. I thought this was a good refinement on that. I saw them doing a lot of the things I'd seen in the Kelvin universe, but I thought they did them better here. And it felt more like it felt like somebody took the Kelvin movies and put a Star Trek spin on them, as weird as that is. I think it was very, as far as let's open this up like a mini Kelvin universe story. I thought it was very successful at being what they wanted it to be, and I thought it did better than a lot of the beats and things in the Kelvin universe movies that they were aping. Same thing but better. So yeah, I like that. It was an enjoyable. I'll be really upset if all the stories this season are like this. But as far as let's hit the ground running opening a pilot, premiere episode, sure. This was a roller coaster, and it was fun, and it was exciting. And there is some stuff going on. There's this theme of progress constantly. Oh, there's more members of the Federation. We're opening up the Starfleet Academy. We're making contact with people. We're building new ships. We're building new drives. There's all this, idea that things are growing and developing and changing. And I like that. I don't like the fact that I don't like it when the Star Trek universe feels static and like nothing ever changes. I want it to be a vibrant, organic, growing set of cultures and society. And so this gave the image that yes, we're changing and growing and building, and that's a good thing. And we also lay down some plot arcs of where we're going to be going with the characters for at least the next few episodes, maybe for the whole season. We kind of start to see where, what this person's journey is going to be, or at least get some notions about it. So, I was quite pleased overall. I am, of course, I'm pretty sure of the three of us, the biggest Discovery fan here. I think it might be my favorite of the new Treks. So possibly the only one that comes close is Picard. I'd
actually agree with you on that.
Yeah. I was very pleased with it. I don't know if it had a whole lot of depth, but it had enough depth to justify itself.
Dave, why don't you tell us how the episode begins with the opening?
Sure thing. Like we're saying before, the episode starts with Burnham and Book earning the trust of some angry butterfly people by delivering them dilithium and doing some geomagnetic compensator satellite repairs. Pretty cool.
So, to me, I think I'm on the same page as Brian. To me, this was like smart Kelvin type stuff. If they just did that like a little smarter. And I want to admit to this, like, I almost got like a little teary-eyed watching this because I was so happy. I was like, oh yeah, this is totally what they should be doing, is like modern Star Trek, where they want to have like the action and energy and excitement. But I like that it was rooted in, Starfleet diplomacy and problem solving and science, and how, Star Trek, I guess, might be known to some people as kind of like, it's very talky, it's very like conversational based, and so I really liked like all of like the conflict and the back and forth and everything between what are they called, the Alshian, whatever, the butterfly people, and Burnham and Book. It's all from like the conversation they have and the dialogue there. I thought it was kind of funny, like you brought a carnivore, like she's a monarch, we're gonna rescue her. I don't know, I just thought that was funny, and I just liked like the weirdness of them being, when the butterflies form butterfly wings, and it felt almost like more Doctor Who than Star Trek, but it kind of felt to me like something like, yeah, if the original series had the budget, they would do like these very what's the word I'm looking for, not outlandish, but
fantastical, imaginative.
No, not fantastical,
exotic.
Not exotic, but audacious. The original series was very audacious. Space Lincoln showing up, a giant green hand grabbing the ship. Butterfly people feels like that to me. This is something like the animated series might have done in the 70s. So yeah, like I liked it.
You know what I was actually thinking of? It's a smaller scene, but the beginning of the original Mirror Universe episode, was that just called Mirror Mirror?
Mm-hmm.
When they're talking to what's the people on the planet? Whoever it is, the Mirror Universe people are about to bomb them into oblivion, but over in the Prime Universe, they're cutting a deal, and I think the guy recognizes, he's like, you could have just taken the dilithium or whatever resource they have on their planet, and Kirk is like, yeah, that's not what the Federation is about. And I guess I like this sort of, I recognize that you want to have some action and adventure and not just have it be talky talk. And originally in the original one, it was talky talk. But I definitely preferred that talky talk to them running and what feels to me like low consequence things, like I'm watching a Peter Jackson movie, like the chase in the Goblin Town in The Hobbit, where they're being blasted out, but they're not really taking it seriously because, of course, they're not going to die because of these butterfly aliens. But then because they're not taking it seriously, I don't take it seriously, and it all feels like a kind of a charade to me. So,
but they gave us a reason why the guys can't shoot straight and why they can't hit them. So I like that. It made me, because I had the same thought, but then I immediately forgave it.
But like they didn't know about it, right? Like Burnham and Book didn't know about it immediately.
They figure it out, and I liked that too, because it showed them using like their Starfleet brains and having to.
I guess so. It just felt like
Tilly and Stamets.
Yeah. It felt like action movie dodging, where there's no chance you're really going to get shot, and Burnham is like kind of excited, and they're quipping to each other.
But it is also a plot point that they're not. It is a plot point that they're not going to get hit.
That's why the stuff like that, they made me say this is smart Kelvin.
Smart Kelvin, yeah. It has its cake and it gets to eat it as well.
It's weird. I don't know quite why, but I prefer, I guess, when if the Kelvin, even when it's being stupid, I think I find their like kind of dialogue and patter to work better. Like they're better at being stupid, maybe. If less tricky. And so I would somewhat prefer those to the way they kind of utilize some bits and pieces in Discovery, but
it's the opening monologue. Well, I guess the opening felt on this planet felt incredibly like we took the opening to Beyond, Star Trek Beyond and Star Trek Into Darkness and just mashed them together. We open up with a comically bad diplomatic negotiation between the captain and the aliens where everything the captain says goes wrong. And then it turns into them running through the woods and jumping off a cliff, being chased by a bunch of angry locals.
Why is there always a cliff?
Yeah. And again, here there's no real justification for that. But again, it was more intelligent than those version. It felt like a Star Trek spin applied to those scenes. And I guess now they've been out enough that those are now Star Trek tropes. So this is a trope now. This is part of the texture and recipe list of Star Trek, that you have scenes where you try to talk to the aliens and they misinterpret every single thing you say in the worst possible way. I don't know if it's good that that's been added to the mix and is now apparently a permanent part of the mix.
I was maybe just in a better mood. I might have just been in a better mood watching this than I was when I first watched Star Trek Beyond, but I was actually like laughing at a lot of this. Like when he asks like, oh, this creature you keep, does it appreciate all these things you do? And books like no, not really. And then when he's like, have you come to make pets of us? Like, I don't know. I thought like the misunderstanding was funny. And I thought the butterfly was just the way that they looked and flew and all of that stuff. I just thought it was like interesting. And it also reminded us how like, the universe has not recovered. The galaxy, I should say, has not recovered from the burn. Like people are still, trying to get over that. They can't fly straight.
The basic underpinnings of the scene I thought were good. I liked the idea of somebody wary of the Federation. Definitely like that. I did like the sort of the visual look on those folks. But execution obviously did not connect it with me.
It's worth noting that they Instagram released some little log entries with the actual actors doing log entries about other stuff that's been going on recently. And Grudge is apparently screwed up a previous diplomatic recontact mission because the the Cobra-headed aliens from first season TNG, they thought Grudge was a meal that was being prepared for them and offered as a tribute or as a gift, and so that screwed up that first contact.
What is this, Brian? This is like side stuff that's going on like the Instagram for Discovery?
Yes. Yeah, Instagram for Discovery. They have these little log. They've released at least 3 little log entries by various people, and one of them is about how how Grudge caused these problems, was misinterpreted. I also absolutely love Book sitting there petting the cat as he looks at the aliens. I was like, you managed to turn petting your cat into fuck you. Very nice. That's right up there with Spock saying live long and prosper in Star Trek 09, where he really is clearly saying fuck you.
What bugged me more than any lack of transporter use in Star Trek Prodigy but why didn't they just beam back to Book's ship? Why did they have to get in that little escape ship, the little guy, and then fly back to Book's ship? Because then when they get to Book's ship, they use the transporter to beam inside of it. Yeah. And then they beam the dilithium. Like, maybe for some reason the transporters don't work on this planet unless you're like in really close proximity.
They address it in the script to just make it even worse. They say, Book says, why don't we beam back to the ship? And she says, no, we have to deliver the dilithium. And then they beam back to the ship and deliver the dilithium.
So were they trying to get the butterfly people to chase them back to the ship? It's the only thing I can think of, but that doesn't make sense.
I want to see them fly.
Yeah, it was very, I will admit that felt like the part of the Kelvin movies that I don't like. The fact that if you stop and think about it for a bit, and even the writers were actually aware this was a problem. There's dialogue indicating that they are aware that this is something they haven't thought of. So I have no idea.
But let me just tell y'all how on board I was with this when I was watching it, though, is that when the dot 23s were taking the dilithium to the satellites, I was so excited with the way all of this was going. We're like, oh, look, like they're all working together. They're still like, running around doing their action stuff, but it was all about like diplomacy and communication with aliens. And then we see like Adira and Stamets, working to like solve the problems. And like, oh, we can just load up some dilithium on their satellites and they'll be able to fly again, and we'll be fixing their problems and showing them how good the Federation is and how good Starfleet is. When I saw these dots going to take the dilithium to the satellite, I was cheering for it. I was like, go dots, go, yay.
Wow.
So, I think they're okay in the 32nd century. They only bother me in the 23rd century.
What about the 24th with the little photonic dots?
Though I like those more. But now that they've actually been like explained, kind of. But yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with this. I liked the weirdness of it, and I liked that it wasn't so like it wasn't like dreary and miserable. They were like happy and excited and doing good, and it makes me more accepting of the dark, serious, heavy stuff that happens at the end of the episode, because I got to see this.
Action diplomacy, and I think
yes.
they got away with it.
I like seeing. I actually, we've talked about this before. Sonequa Martin Green herself is this very exuberant person, and they did have her as this kind of very mopey character for much of the series run. And so it makes sense to kind of give her more access to that kind of full emotional spectrum. I think it's, I still think that like just in general, the writing on Discovery could just stand to be stronger. There's those sort of sometimes unearned emotional moments. I'm not super into her suddenly being kind of exuberant like that, because I feel like she's being that way because they want her. That's just where the plot is supposed to be. The character is supposed to be there. But I don't always feel like I've watched that growth happen or bought into it.
But why should she be unhappy right now? Like, what does she have to be unhappy about?
I don't know. I feel like things didn't things go almost really horribly terrible at the end of the previous one? Previous season.
When they got dilithium to give to like the whole.
I mean, they did, but galaxy, like also who was the head of the Orion Andorian Syndicate? Yeah, it was like they came to the brink of something horrible, of like a horrific sort of wartime scenario. So yes, it worked out well. Like I said,
this is supposed to be months later. This is like a big time cut has occurred.
I agree. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like the writing has not made me feel like she's just happy because they've said it's forward. It still feels jarring to me. I wish she had better, I guess, happy dialogue with her and Book.
Isn't she in a romantic relationship with him at this point?
Yeah, a much healthier one than her last one with Ash Tyler.
Yeah.
So I she's got her mom, like for the first time in her life, like she can like just call up her mom on the phone like anytime. Like I don't know, I think she has a lot to be happy about.
Yeah. I mean,
no, it's like I said, it's not that I don't. I guess okay, so. They essentially jumped it ahead, and we had seen her being happier in the previous season too. Maybe I'm just saying I feel like Discovery's writing is weak. This is just is a roundabout way of saying that.
Okay.
That the particular manner that her happiness is expressed rings hollow to me, and I don't think it's the actress. I think it's the writing.
Well, Brian, tell us what's going on back at Starfleet headquarters.
At Starfleet HQ, we see the reopening of Starfleet Academy, meet the new Federation president, and witness Admiral Vance receive a distress call from a Starfleet repair station.
There's that conversation between Book and Burnham before he takes off to go to his nephew's bar mitzvah, basically, which that kind of has a different meaning the second time you watch this. But the two remarkable things in this episode is they draw attention to the 11 between Sonequa Martin Green's eyes when she makes her quote unquote growly face.
We'll never be able to not see it.
But also, yeah, I don't know if it's a triple or at first I thought it was like a baby Horta because I have a baby Horta that follows my character in Star Trek Online, which I don't play a ton of, but I do enjoy from time to time. So like, is that like a Horta, like a little bitty Horta that's on the ship? But
I was thinking
kind of
it
makes
made
a
a
triple like
little
noise. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I heard a triple little coo or something when
So
it
I
went
have
by.
no idea. I have no idea what that is. So like,
And also, I got the
I
impression
didn't
that
include
it was,
in our Gorn Eggs section. I have no idea what the
we
hell
don't know
to
yet.
make of that. Yeah.
I
Was
am
it-
95% sure that's supposed to be a tribble, whatever.
That's
else,
that's what more people are saying than anything else is a tribble.
Was
But
it
it
riding
doesn't make
something
sense.
or was it moving on its own?
Yeah, like we've never seen a tribble just like slide across the floor like that. So that's why like I honestly can't say. I've seen some Star Trek. I know a little bit about it, but I cannot say with any confidence what the hell that is.
I believe that the creators of the show wanted it to be a treble. You can say I don't know whether they executed it very well, but I'm quite confident that.
Do y'all think?
And I'll say this: if this was Lower Decks or Prodigy, the people who work on those shows, someone would have been on Twitter and would have told us what it is by now. So Discovery, a little bit more transparency, if you don't mind. I love you, but let's talk on Twitter.
There is the question of, is it just a one-off sight gag, or are they going to actually maybe say that there are, what would you call it, uplifted tribbles that or that they've always been more intelligent than we thought? I don't know.
Yeah, they evolved over 900 years. I mean, I don't
They
know.
evolved.
We have belugas that serve in Starfleet now, so maybe we have tribbles also.
With their high
or
reproduction
it's-
rate, maybe they evolved on a faster level.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
Or somebody's tribble just got loose and the captain doesn't feel like dealing with it at the moment.
We get to see them.
Somebody else's problem.
We get to see them using that new AR wall that they use in the show. There's some behind the scenes pictures you can see how like they shot like the Starfleet cadet ceremony. This huge environment was created on the AR wall, and it looks really good. But I definitely can tell that they were shooting this in the middle of COVID because there are so few cadets. You'd expect like the new class to be, dozens of people, but instead it's only like I think 18.
There's if you look up in the background, there is like they at least digitally added a bunch of observers. There's like several dozen people up.
There's like more
race.
observers than there are students.
I thought it was a little bit. So I overall liked this scene quite a bit.
Me too.
But it's a little. I thought it was a little bit weirdly dark, just kind of very gunmetal gray.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's just kind of like the color scheme of the Starfleet headquarters they established in season 3.
But
They
it's
need somebody
usually
to,
better lit. It's better lit in season 1. This room is very darkly lit.
I figured for a ceremony they'd bring some trees in.
Yeah. Maybe they'll get there eventually. It is kind of cool though that they are that they do have like a ceremony about like making Starfleet Academy a thing again, and it would be cool if like at the end of the season we see like the next semester or something, and there it's like many more than just 18 students. It's like a larger group coming in.
Yeah. I paid attention and I didn't see this. Maybe I missed it. Where the hell did all the Starfleet officers come from for the last 125 years if there was no academy?
Yeah, they weren't going to school. They were just I guess just like handing out commissions to whoever they'd recruit.
You seem like a badass. You get to be a lieutenant. Oh, you are really badass. You get to be a captain.
Yeah, we can assume that like none of these 32nd century Starfleet people went to the academy. Like Vance is not 125 years old, so he probably has never set foot into a Starfleet
if
academy.
They told me Vance was 125, I wouldn't blink. I would expect that humans probably live and for a ridiculously long time in the 31st century. But if they have access to good medical technology, which clearly Vance does, so I mean. I might even believe it. I might even think it's interesting if they said, yeah, there hasn't been any new Starfleet officers in 125 years. We're just all really old. But that poor guy's been an ensign for longer than Harry Kim. But So, but I don't think that's what they're trying to imply.
What was jarring to me is that when I watched this for the first time at the virtual premiere with the chat going, is that when they show the Federation president, people immediately in the chat were like, OMG, I hate her. She's the new Kai Wynn. Hashtag not my president. I was like, oh my God, y'all are out of control. Why do y'all hate this poor woman so much? I guess I had kind of forgotten that in that conversation with Book, Michael said that she wasn't excited about being, I guess, like the opening act for like this politician to come give a speech and stuff. But like immediately people, I was like, are y'all just like that, like anti-Cardassian? Because she's a weird combination. We've learned from outside of the show, the producers have said that she's Bajoran, Cardassian, and human all mixed together, which kind of embodies the whole like idea of different species working together and stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's something that'll be interesting to see them doing more of. But yeah, like in general, politicians don't play much of a role in Star Trek unless they seem to be, I think, very often duplicitous. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably what led people to really jump the gun on her. I also think the show wanted to play with that. Yeah. They wanted you to start to think about her as a potential adversary. I kind of come on board
with that. Like as episode goes on, I kind of like get more and more against her as things play out. But I like the character. I think President Relic, I think she's interesting. I liked her speech though, where she talked about developing clean energy. You know, we're going to get off of dilithium, so I like that. Kind of like getting off fossil fuels. I on the nose, but I like it. She talks about scientific exploration is coming back. We get this space dock named after an important Star Trek character, the Archer space dock, where they're going to be, refitting ships and
I love all that stuff.
We see Vance's family. We see Tilly. Everyone on Disco got a promotion. Like Stamets and Kolber, I think, are both full commanders now. Owo, Detmer, and Reese and Bryce, I think, are all lieutenant commanders. Tilly's a lieutenant, and Adira's an ensign. So yeah, Adira, perfect. Adira didn't go to the academy, but they commissioned her as an ensign. Or they, not she, they.
Right. I think my favorite moment in that sequence of sort of optimistic glimpses was the Archer space dock. I was trying to figure out if the music I heard was something from Enterprise or if it was Voyager. It sounded to me like Voyager's theme.
Oh, maybe I'll talk about that in the Gorn Eggs section of the show, where we talk about all the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections.
But at the very least, I thought it was a cool thing to see. Just one of those nice Trek things to remember the roots.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like the music. That was definitely one of my favorite points in this scene. Let's see, I guess this is, they get this call from the repair station, and I can't quite remember where they mention it, but it just happens to be right next to Book's planet. And I thought, that's a hell of a coincidence.
Small galaxy.
Yeah. So much for space being, the final frontier. Apparently, we're starting up our new science division again in Starfleet. Don't you mean exploration? Oh no, we've already explored everything. The galaxy is too small.
That doesn't seem nearly egregious as any time the Enterprise is the only ship in range. Especially when it's something that's happening near Earth. So
see, I can always accept the Enterprise that they're wherever the Yorktown is, there's a problem. Then the Yorktown was the only ship in range for that problem. I just assume that all the ships are getting called into problems where they're the only ship in range all the time. It just happens to be that this is the problem that the Enterprise is close to. The fact that they always seem to be the ship defending Earth, that's more sus. I'll give you that. But I thought it was a little. I missed it the first time through, and then the second time through, I was like, "Wait a minute, this is right next to." How do you say that?
Quajon.
So yeah, space is small.
I was more taking note of the fact that this dude who from the repair station who sends the distress call, his name is Commander Nollis. And I'm like, the only Nollis I care about in Star Trek is Lee Nollis, who is really cool.
That was the guy who was the Bajoran rebel fighter, right?
Yeah, the war hero who was like super exaggerated, but he was actually like a really decent dude. He just wasn't like what
he wasn't ready to take on the role that they needed him to. Yeah, he was a great character.
Yeah, I love Lee Nollis, much more than Commander Nollis. But hey, they both end up dead, so. But yeah, they get the distress call. Then there's tension between the president and Burnham, which I don't know. It kind of felt like a little bit about like, I guess like the stereotype of like women not getting along, like they always like get snippy towards each other. But I totally understand like the motivations here between like Burnham doesn't want, like Kirk would have been like this if like some politician wanted to like take a ride on the Enterprise on a mission. Kirk would have been like, I don't need them breathing down the back of my neck trying to tell me what to do. And
yeah, no, I thought that from Burnham's point of view, the ship. This is not a presidential mission. This is a rescue mission. We should not have like arguably the most important person in the Federation on board this ship going into a situation which is not well defined and is not going to have a whole lot of support services to help deal with things if the problem blows up too big. And yet, when we learn she's checking out Michael to see if she's good for this job she's looking for a captain for, makes total sense that she wants to get a firsthand read on whether or not Michael is the captain she's looking for. So once I'd gotten to the end of the episode, I felt this scene plays fine. That they're both going to be pushing in different directions because for reasons that aren't entirely clear at the time the scene is playing out. So.
I liked that when Vance is like, yeah, like there's really nothing we can do about this. If you don't like it, like we can't like stop the president from tagging along. Yeah. But Dave, unless you have any thoughts on this, we'll go ahead and get into the actual rescue.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait. I'll comment more on Burnham and El Presidente when we, because they're gonna be sparring throughout the episode.
Yeah, I did like the. Deer and Gray, I was just, the moment they came on the bridge, I got so excited. I was like, these two are awesome. The Instagrams clarify, it sounds like they're building some sort of android for Gray in the Instagram.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they definitely mentioned Gray's lack of corporeal options right now.
I figured it would be a mobile holographic emitter deal, but apparently it sounds like they're building a whole body or something. So.
What if I told you it's neither of those?
Oh, okay. Well, the log entry wasn't entirely clear.
Father, he comes from the temporal Cold War and he knows things.
I didn't say anything. I just asked a question.
Yeah.
I said, what if I told you something?
This is like how they ask questions about Watergate from Deep Throat.
It did vaguely bug me that Detmer, surely 21st century medical science could like get rid of this big metal thing on the side of Detmer's
I thought that
head.
too, yeah. Does Detmer like being a cyborg? Like, every show has a cyborg now, because we have Detmer, we have Rutherford, we have on Picard, there's 7 of 9. And on Prodigy, Jenkum Pog has the robot arm. So
Geordi casts a long shadow over Trek history.
Yes.
I say that somewhat jokingly, but I think that's where it got going.
Well, let's talk about like this repair station, the Deep Space Repair Station Beta 6. It got hit with some super gravity and is spinning out of control without life support on most of its decks. So the Disco shows up, Tilly and Adira beam aboard to assist with the repairs, and immediately here, like we get like some real life science stuff that they do in this episode, which I kind of like, where they see on screen in his distress call message, there was the gravitational lensing that's happening, the distortion they see on there,
which is a great example of how they put a Star Trek spin on a Kelvin universe story. You know, those little moments that you would not get in a J.J. Abrams film.
Yeah, smart Kelvin.
Smart Kelvin. I did like we get into another language thing like we've been doing in Prodigy, where we're like shining a spotlight on the fact that not all of these people are speaking English.
What was the language thing?
Shit show, when he says one of his crew said that the station, they were losing life support, they were spinning out of control. Someone said it was a shit show. That's a Earth word for bad.
Oh.
Yeah,
I
and
thought
then
that
they
was
follow it
I
up
thought
with
that was
Squidtle.
cheesy.
Yeah, and
Yes,
then they follow it up with Squiddle, or whatever, and and
The
decoding
Q
that.
nodes are squiddled.
Yeah,
The
which
32nd
apparently
century, I have no idea what like the techno babble is. Like, what the hell's a Q node?
they've captured the Q and harvested them and used them for energy sources now.
Wow.
Nothing unethical about that. I thought those kind of those quips I thought landed clunkily.
I like the idea that we were acknowledging language, and it tied in nicely with Prodigy also acknowledging language. I thought the show thing was actually reasonably funny. The Squiddle thing, maybe you could have lost that just because we had just done shit show. Apparently, Michael knows words that the Universal Translator doesn't, because the Universal Translator doesn't translate Squiddle, but Michael knows what it means. So
Well, she might have learned that on school. At the she took
Yeah.
Ekaza's whatever his species is, Ekazanum, whatever it is. Like, she took that language as a course at the Vulcan Science Academy.
Yeah. And she's also, from the past, words that are fallen out of almost complete disuse in the present might be something that were more common back when she came from, but maybe.
Brian, you mentioned.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to talk about like Adira and Gray, but Dave, if you have something else about like the
Yeah, real quick aside, I
Space
thought that the
message.
visual on the tumbling space station looked a little silly because it looked to me like a I don't know, like a rolling stool in space or something like that. I don't know, somehow I just thought that it just should have had a cooler design. That's all. I imagine if the Deep Space Nine station was tumbling through space, cooler looking design. Not everything has to look as good as that, but it did look like a stool on rollers to me. Yeah, that shot is a perfect example.
I kind of liked it. Tumbling,
I think it was supposed to look awkward and not
utilitarian.
Right.
It looked like it needed help. It can't look cool tumbling around. Like, it has to look kind of dumb, because then you have your cool hero. No, I'm serious. Then you have like your cool hero ship, show up to help. It's all visual storytelling. Like, oh, like these people are the ones that are at a disadvantage and in need of
Right,
help.
because they're in like a little shitty rolling stool.
And we're like the big badasses coming to save the day.
Yeah, friends of the president.
But Adira and Gray, Brian, you mentioned their little conversation. We get to see Gray briefly here, and what I loved about this moment, what really stood out to me, and kind of made my heart swell a little bit and get happy, was the acceptance of the disco crew. Adira is standing here on the bridge talking to Gray, and they don't have to be like, oh, this is going to be weird if I'm like, it's going to look like I'm talking to myself and whatever. It's just like the idea of like the crew understands their situation and is accepting of it. And like, they don't have to explain or hide that. And Disco's always been kind of like the touchy-feely show. And sometimes, it does kind of bother me with what we've coined the unearned emotional moments, and people always joke about how like people are always crying on the show, or like something good happens and everyone will stand up and clap, or everyone will stand up and hug or whatever. But I don't know, watching this episode, like and also the second episode hit some of these emotional moments for me. It's like, I get it now. I get why like there are people who love this show like I love Deep Space Nine. It's like just their favorite Star Trek ever. And I kind of get it. The presentation in this episode, it kind of make those things connect with me more than previous seasons have.
I've seen a lot of different like sci-fi and fantasy shows, or any something with supernatural things where somebody will talk to a ghost or something that other people can't see, and usually it is something that they make out that is kind of has to be kept hidden. It's almost always a secret, and so I actually really did like that the whole thrust of that scene was this is something that Adira can do out in the open, and no one is going to question them.
They have new, like when they go on away missions, like those vests that they wear. They have like new 32nd century versions of them, which I like because like they light up like Tron technology. makes it feel like you're further in the future. It's like a little bit more advanced than 23rd to 24th century.
I mean, it makes sense that you would have some with what we've seen, that they would have some vests that would do like. I would expect those vests would have a spacesuit option where you just punch a thing and it does like it did with Michael later on in the show. Foop, she's wearing, or suddenly you're wearing a spacesuit. And which you could argue, does that fit with what we saw? But I later on in the story, but I like the idea that the clothes do stuff, that because I'm quite certain that even 50 years from now, I think our clothes are going to be way more intelligent and clever than anything that we expect. And I think Star Trek's going to look rather dated if they're not showing their clothes to be clever and tricksy and with lots of little options and stuff and color change or whatever. So yeah, I like that they're upgrading the wardrobe.
Would y'all think of like the upside down station? I thought that was kind of cool the way that it looked.
I loved it. Loved it. I love they built that whole set upside down. I
thought that was a cool idea. I was trying to figure
out the window.
Did they show how they were like? I guess at some point they would need to access control panels and stuff. Did they ever kind of show how they were getting to the keyboards and stuff that would be down below?
Yeah, they somehow have either vocally or they hoisted somebody up there. They're basically a holographic interface that they basically reached up, grabbed the monitor, turned it around, and extended it down. And because it's a hologram, you can do all of that. And they're just pushing holographic buttons, and nobody's touching.
Makes sense. If you have to worry about gravity and other problems like that, you want to have versatile options for getting to controls. But yes, I thought it was a good visual device for showing, in a way, how bad things were on this ship, and that I don't know, things were turned upside down.
And when you see out the window and you see them spinning and you see like the Discovery out there, I don't know if because I'm watching the show on like a newer TV that has a high dynamic range on the colors on it now, or if they have like a bigger budget in season 4. It's a combination of the two, but the show just looks so much better now. It's never looked this good to me before.
Yeah.
Or maybe the uniforms. It's like there being more color on the screen.
I believe I made the prediction back when they first trotted out the gravity anomaly in the trailers that they would use this as an excuse to really lean into the upside down filming that Discovery likes to do. And they didn't wait to pull the trigger on that one.
And this one's directed by Tunde, who's I call him the director of directors on Discovery. He's like the head director. He's the producer in charge of all the directing. And he also directs like all the season finales and season premieres. But yeah, he does like go like really crazy with like all of the weird camera spinning and stuff. But I think after 3 years of experimentation with that, I think he's kind of homed in on how to use it to the greatest effect. And in this episode, stuff like that, and also like later when Burnham is spinning out of control in her work bee and stuff like that, like it pays off, and it's like actually doing something meaningful to the story to like illustrate a certain point or something that's going on. So yeah, I liked all of that.
No, I really, it reinforces the issue, the plot points as it's a visual gimmick that reinforces plot points rather than just looks stylish, which is often the case in the past. I wanted to see, the one thing I would have demanded is when they're doing the montage fixing everything, I would have had a scene with Adira sitting on Tilly's shoulders so she can reach up and install the stuff on that big hunk of machinery that they pulled out of the floor, effectively ceiling, and it goes way up. And I just would have had one shot where they're on where Adira's up on the shoulders shoving stuff into a slot or something.
That is a very specific request.
That would have been great. Like it would have been fun and hilarious and would have fit perfectly with the look, they're getting it done. There's kind of verve that they wanted in that montage. So.
Dave, do you want to tell us what happens when the frozen methane shower begins?
What happens is that frozen methane comes tumbling out of the system's Oort cloud and rains down dangerously on the station. Burnham orders the Disco's shields to extend and protect the station while she goes EVA to get the station's escape pod working. Things are complicated by the tension between Burnham and the President, but they're able to get everyone on board and jump away. However, the shuttle bay gets hit with debris at the last second, causing an explosion that kills Commander Nahles.
Huh.
Jeez.
No, I kind of like Nahles by the end, but the episode does kind of make him like a little. So I thought they were kind of nuanced with this because they talk about Star Trek 3, my favorite Star Trek movie. They kind of make Nahus the JT Esteban, where he's kind of like the incompetent Starfleet dude that makes our heroes look cooler. And then the president is kind of like the Captain Styles, where she's there to kind of be like the asshole. But I thought they were both a little bit more nuanced than the characters in Star Trek 3. And when Nahus first starts losing it, though, where he's like, no, like, we have to risk it. We have to risk making it to our shuttle bay, even though there's no life support. We do see the president open up some file and start reading something right then and there. So, later when Burnham is like, oh, have you actually been to his homeworld, or did you just make that shit up? And she's like, does it matter if I was lying or not? If we get like more of that conflict between the two of them, it's like she might have just been looking at, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, she is kind of a snake. She is, it's like Cardassian side coming out from the politician.
I like that. I was like, okay, this president is smart. She's playing the game, not right now. She's playing the game of where we're going to be in 15, 20 minutes.
She's savvy.
And I was like, that's who you want as your president. You want somebody who's playing the long game, who's thinking 5 or 6
But it's also
moves ahead.
that little bit of politician, like disingenuous. I'll say anything if it's like the right thing to say, and I'll act like I mean it. And by having that personality, you kind of never mean or stand for anything at all. You're just so fluid.
Kirk bullshits people all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not all about misdirection and bullshit. So I'm
not saying she's a good guy or a bad guy. I'm just saying like it's complicated in like a way that I like. A little bit of that more that little bit more Star Trek nuance that we might agree that not to make this whole podcast a comparison between the two, but maybe like what Prodigy might be lacking a little bit of.
Yeah.
Well, what was it? Vance earlier made the point of saying that a politician in your corner can be worth a lot, and I wondered if that's going to be a thematic throughout the season. The kind of Starfleet idealism versus political pragmatism, or that's just kind of something they wanted to bring to the fore with her first encounter with the president.
I think it's going to be a theme throughout the season, but
I think that's a good theme potentially.
Yeah. I think she's absolutely right about apparently Michael's going to leave the bridge without any senior officer in charge. That would not fly in any.
It's
US
a crisis situation.
whatsoever.
Like, is that the right time to like question the See, I'm going to be more on Team Burnham. I can already tell. This is going to be like a divisive thing, and people are either going to be on like Team Relic or Team Burnham, and I'm going to be on Team Burnham because I'm like, it's in the middle of a crisis situation. Yeah, like you don't want to like interfere with the captain in the middle of a crisis.
If the XO had been there, like Stamets had been on the bridge or something to take and been available to take the con.
We don't know who the XO is in this episode.
Well,
I'm guessing Reese because he was in the captain's chair earlier.
I thought Tilly was supposed to be the XO, wasn't that?
She was XO for Saru for a little bit in season 3, but she was acting XO, first officer.
Yeah. And I guess I felt like, because they haven't specified who's taking over, and it's apparently these junior officers whose names I still have trouble remembering. I kind of
Reese
feel like
and Bryce, but Lieutenant Christopher is substituting for Bryce right now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the president at least has earned the right to say, "You sure about this?" And I don't know if she really does more than that.
Do you know what was the icing on the cake though that really made me switch to Team Burnham right here at this moment? This is when I was like, oh, all these people like commenting that they don't like the president. Like right now I agree with them. But when she says a question isn't questioning, I'm like, what the hell do you mean a question isn't questioning? Like you're like, oh, is it really a good time for the captain to leave the bridge? Like, how the hell is that not questioning someone's captaining?
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah, that was a bit of an odd dialogue.
There were sometimes Star Trek lines of dialogue throughout this episode that I kind of felt like, why is that line there?
I don't even think it was a bad line. I think it was kind of exciting television because it made me have like an emotional reaction. But it's like more like that tension between. And then later, Burnham's kind of doing the same thing. Burnham is questioning her when Burnham's like saying like, oh, did you really go to that dude's planet or did you make it up?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you're just trying to see if I'm lying. But yeah, like I mean, I don't know. I like those sparks. I like the confrontation.
The Michael questioning the president about something that clearly under no circumstances does the answer to this question affect the current situation. I was like, really, Michael, we're going to get into a dick wagging contest about this right
See,
now?
Brian is on Team Relic. I can already tell. I'm gonna be fighting Brian over this all season.
I felt like the president is a little out of line, but whoa, Michael was way out of line to bring that up in the middle of a crisis like that. I felt like that made me very uncomfortable, and I think, yeah, very much put me on. When we see what happens later on with Relic, I was very much on Team Relic at the end of the episode because of that.
I have a different perspective real quick.
Yeah.
My perspective is that I don't like it when it gets too meta and stuff. And when there's certain Star Trek tropes like the captain going down with landing parties or doing risky things that it annoys me when they call them out, because it's just a trope that we all kind of collectively enjoy because we want the lead of the show to go do shit. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of was annoyed by her question and the subsequent conversation in the middle of all this shit, just because I was like, come on, this kind of thing happens on Trek all the time, but do we need to call it out right now?
Can I say something about it that like might make you more receptive of it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that Burnham was from the 23rd century, where captains were like Kirk and Pike, and they were more proactive. And then we see in the 24th century, it becomes more of the tradition for Picard to stay on the Enterprise and the first officer Riker to like beam down and do all of the on the ground work type stuff. So with this being, in further in the future in the 32nd century, this might seem like, oh yeah, there's like that old school 23rd century way of doing things, which isn't that cool.
Well, I do broadly agree with the president. This is something that'll come out by the end of it. That Burnham, as portrayed in all of these seasons, has always been very go with the gut, and that actually did bother me a fair amount. Like I felt like she needed to be some sort of restraint. Like she needed a Spock, and she should be her own Spock theoretically. But anyway, we'll talk about it more as we get to the end.
Yeah, I think it set up that conversation and the underlying underlying bit or motivation for that conversation with the president at the end. But when we get to that scene, I'll talk about it more.
It was good. It was good continuity too to have Michael want to go out and be in the work bee, because they said that way back in season 2, that season 2 premiere, Brother, I think, with when Pike first comes on to the Discovery, that Burnham had logged like the most hours on those little pods that they had to use to go across that asteroid field.
Yeah, no, they like to put her in those pods, and I'm fine with it. And I think it actually enhanced the story to have her go and tell the president to screw off and go do her thing. I was surprised. This is the one time where there's a weird anomaly causing problems, and the navigational deflector is a device designed to project a force field and stop debris that's flying at the ship from hitting the ship, and they don't invoke we're diverting power to the navigational deflector seed, when it actually would have made fucking sense for them to invoke the navigational deflector. That's what it's supposed to do, not all this other bullshit. It's supposed to deflect rocks of methane from hitting the ship. That's what they put it there for.
Yeah, that's a good point. They could have been using the deflector instead of like using the shields. But I guess we're more used to like shields like going down, like, oh, they're at 75, they're at 25%, because that was an important thing. Like the shields are like running out, and then eventually like the shields go down.
Yeah. I assumed they were using both, because it is a navigational deflector shield. They just usually drop the shield from the name when they say it. At first, I was wondering why they weren't using the phasers to disintegrate the ice, but I guess they did a cost-benefit analysis and figured more power to the shields rather than more power, diverting power to phasers was going to be better, I guess. I have to assume somebody crunched the numbers on that.
Well, so I like that they were using some real-life science again here with they said this came from Oort cloud. It was like, oh yeah, if there's like these weird waves of gravity, throwing things around, they would probably push some Oort cloud material. That's the
asteroid belt.
The area. No, it's like beyond the asteroid. It's like the outer part of the solar system. There's a bunch
where
of
all the ice is.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like frozen rocks floating around on like the outer part, most outer part of solar systems.
I think that's where most of the comets are supposed to originate from, or something. Yeah. I think, but
I liked Michael having the programmable matter environmental. So it's kind of like Iron Man makes his like nanotech suits. Like, this is the type of stuff they should be doing in the 32nd century to make it feel more advanced than what we normally get in Star Trek.
Yeah, I agree too. I did think, you don't have to shield the whole space station. You just have to shield the part with that room in it. And maybe you'd have more power if you only shielded that part of the station. But
I don't know. I guess if the station was getting all bonked around, that would probably be bad for everyone.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I just said, well, I don't know how the magic science works. Presumably it makes sense if you've gone to school and studied this stuff. But it felt weird. It felt slightly weird to me. So,
and I liked that Burnham, I guess, rode she had to like get the escape pod, get the debris clear, and then I guess like she rides it back to Discovery is how she got back. Yeah. But they had to reprogram the escape pod to do 2 trips, and then the second trip it gets Nahlas, Adira, and Tilly, and then that's like they lost the shields and they stuck around for a few minutes to get the last 3 people, and then that's when they got hit with the debris that causes the serious damage and kills Nahlas.
I didn't get a chance to say this early. I didn't care about Nahlas at all. I mean, it was fine as some Starfleet guy who I wouldn't be friends with, but I was like, clearly I'm supposed to have become emotionally attached to him, and I don't know if it was the director's fault. I kind of feel like it was the actor. They just didn't make me care about this guy. I didn't care about him when he was wrong, and I didn't care about him when he was right, and I didn't care about him when he was dead.
Did you see the Lurian? He had a Lurian on his crew, like Morn.
Yeah. Yep.
It was cool to see.
I probably would have cared more about the Lurian just because that's the first Lurian
that's the first Lurian we've ever seen in Starfleet.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind Nolan. They did give him that moment where he's like, "What are you two gonna do when we get out of this?" And that was like the moment, like kind of make you care about him and be sad when he dies. But when Culber has the medical tricorder on him and it says patient deceased, I thought about like, imagine if you're seeing like a loved one being like diagnosed by a doctor and you see like these giant holographic words appear next to him, patient deceased, and that's how you learn that your wife is dead or something like. It's like, that's kind of insensitive. I assume there's like a privacy filter that the doctor can put on there where only he can see it and everyone else gets like a distorted perspective on it, but
he's also a military doctor. They don't tend to worry about that stuff quite as much as saving people's lives and
what if he's actually a sociopath and he gets off on people seeing that?
Don't say that about Dr. Culber. He's a sweetheart. He's always worried about like other people's emotions. He'd never be like that. He's the least likely person to be a sadist on this entire ship.
I am quite sure, Father, you've talked about the sort of information that they kind of push when they're doing animated shows to have a lot of information contained in imagery. And I think that was literally all that was intended with that, was just a quick visual explanation. That is to say, no point in doing CPR, space CPR.
Well, Brian, why don't you tell us about the President and Burnham's Kobayashi Maru conversation?
All right. The President and Burnham discuss recent events and no-win scenarios. Burnham's philosophy of not accepting inevitable failure clashes with the president's pragmatic beliefs. We also learned that Michael was being observed and considered for the captaincy of the Voyager J, which is being refitted to test new propulsion technology.
Yeah, so 3 dead, 4 wounded, but 9 people saved from the station. They get to go home again.
That was a big-ass station for 9 people.
That stool doesn't look like it could contain that many people.
That thing was vast.
They evoke the old Star Trek 2 convo about needs of the many, or rather the Star Trek 3 variant, that sometimes the needs of the few or the one outweigh the needs of the many, at least on an emotional level. But yes, there is a bit of the way, as sometimes happens, they did this with Marvel Civil War 2, of pushing a little bit back on their own trope that sometimes, the captain often just through sort of sheer willpower will make a risky situation play out all right. And here they wanted to show that, well, it didn't play out as all right as we wanted it to, and it could have gotten bad for everybody. So the president does have at least a seemingly reasonable stance here.
Yeah. This is the exact same scene as when Pike is dressing down Kirk in Into Darkness, only written better. Though I actually like that scene a lot in Into Darkness. I think it's one of the better parts of that movie. But again, we're dealing with the exact same question. Michael is a very good hero. She is not. We are questioning whether or not she is a good captain. And this was the same question that J.J. Kirk was definitely being confronted with. Is he a good captain? Yes, he's a good hero. He's absolutely an asset to have on the team, absolutely saves people's lives, absolutely useful to have around. But do we want, is captain's chair where we want this person? Is this a good fit? And I think that's going to be Michael's journey for this season, or at least the next few episodes, is Michael learning to delegate a bit, learning that that she needs to be responsible for everyone rather than just grabbing a phaser and swinging into battle and solving all the problems herself
with a Vulcan hello.
Yes. Though I did find that interesting in that it's over rationality, over big picture thinking that led to the Vulcan hello problem. Whereas here she's being criticized for being basically too emotionally driven and too not focusing on the problem directly in front of her rather than looking at the big picture.
She takes the big actions though. Like she makes the big waves, and that's when that's part of what the president is criticizing her of, like, oh yeah, like you've done like some really cool stuff. You're the one who deciphered the burn. You got us the dilithium planet. Back in the 23rd century, you stopped the control from taking over the universe. You ended the Klingon War. You've done all this stuff, but yeah, you are a big pendulum, and that's kind of the same as being like a big wrecking ball. But I do kind of get burned on where it's like, well, that's kind of harsh. Like, she's definitely like she's been a net positive.
Yeah, but do we again? When by making her captain, you're attaching the entire weight of Discovery to that pendulum. Is she going to lead that pendulum, or is Discovery going to be flopping around as she swings around, and just Discovery is going to be smashing into stuff and getting all beat to hell as she runs around saving the day everywhere? And I think that's a very valid question for the president to ask, especially given she's trying to find a good captain for this particular job she's looking for.
It feels like to some degree her wild actions in past seasons have been somewhat lucky. She pulled it off because she is the hero, and that's sort of the weight of Trek is in favor of heroes.
And she isn't the captain in a lot of those moments.
Yeah,
that's true.
But I kind of
she goes running off behind the captain's back.
She kind of feels like less like renegade-y. I kept complaining in season 3 when she kept like going against Saru or going like behind his back in some situations where it didn't even make sense, where like she probably just could have like talked to Saru and explained it to him. And I kind of like her as being like the captain here because she is the one in control, so she doesn't feel as much of like the renegade. Even though I guess they are kind of like establishing here she might have like she might bump heads against the president a little bit. But
so your argument is, since she keeps breaking the rules, we'll just make her the person who creates the rules.
Yeah,
and
just
that
put
will
her
solve
in charge.
The problem.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to deal with that issue. Is just I
don't know if I would have thought that, but now like seeing the execution of it, and I've seen 2 episodes of the season, and it's like, oh yeah, I think I actually do like this show more with Michael in the captain's chair. It actually, to me, it just feels like more of a natural fit than her being the spunky rule breaker. Let's let Mariner have that territory. Like I feel like Mariner's carved out that territory on another Star Trek show. So let's let Mariner be the spunky rule breaker, and then we'll have Burnham be the badass captain.
Yeah, I get. I mean, you've seen the next episode, but I kind of wonder if we're leading up to Michael, a scene where some sequence where Michael does get a little too focused on just solving the problem herself and charging into danger rather than looking out for her crew in an upcoming episode. But
that was definitely what we were supposed to get out of the scene here, is that some people died on her watch. We were at the very least we got the warning of it.
This is just, she pulled it off. I don't think there's any way this could have turned out better than the way that it did here. But there's definitely, you can see lots of ways it could have turned out vastly worse.
Tell that to Nahlis's family, Brian.
It would have
Nahlis was going to die no matter what. There was no version of this where Nahlis got out unless he got on the escape pod in the first batch. That was the only way he was getting out of this.
The result was 3 dead, 4 wounded, but 9 people from that station saved. So they did lose 2 disco crew members in that collision. But if Michael would have jumped earlier and just left Tilly, Adira, and Nahlis behind, it would have been 3 dead, nobody wounded, and 9. So it basically you would have the same number of deaths, but you would have had 4 less wounded. But then Adira and Tilly would be gone, and we actually really like them because they're our show regulars. So, by the way, I loved seeing Blue Del Barrio's name in the opening titles. That now they're a regular on the show, and Sonequa Martin Green is a producer. So I think there's I'm very confident there's going to be a season 5 and possibly a season 6 if they're bumping because there is a major contract renegotiation with Sonequa Martin Green. So if they give an actor a producer credit,
that there is. Executive producer can mean anything in Hollywood. The only one certain is you're going to get a check when the movie or show happens.
It's a way of giving someone who works on your show a pay raise on top of their normal pay. Yeah. But that's most people don't care about the inside Hollywood inside baseball type stuff of that. The other thing I want to mention in this scene is that they're not only working on replicating the spore drive tech, but the Voyager J is getting something new. She calls it the pathway drive. So I don't know what that is, but I also wonder what if one of these new technologies they're trying to develop to get off of their dilithium dependency. What if they build this smaller ship that actually runs off of a
star
proto-star? And they test. They're like, okay, we're gonna send it off on autopilot, and they're like, oh no, it actually went back in time to the 24th century and crashed in this asteroid. Shit. Well, back to the drawing board.
And all the graphics will be set to a coup de grace mode during the crash.
Yeah, it didn't look like the 32nd century user interface on that ship, but just throwing it out there.
The physical design did, but the graphic layout looked very 24th century.
But what else in the scene? Michael talked about the Kobayashi Maru. It almost sounded like she might have taken it, but I don't think she has because she didn't go to the academy. She just went to the Vulcan Science Academy and then got a Starfleet commission.
Her brother invented the damn thing. I'm sure she knows about it.
If they follow, if it played out the same in the Prime timeline as the Kelvin timeline, then Spock invented the Kobayashi Maru test, or at least invented a version of it. Now, does she know about this cadet at the academy named James Kirk, who somehow cheated and found a way to pass the test and got awarded for it for original thinking? Would she have known about that? It seems like she might have heard about that, but to her that just happened a decade earlier.
Yeah,
her perspective.
It did just occur to me that the first time Kirk and Spock meet, Spock's going to be like, "Oh, this is the dick who screwed up my test." I remember that in the Prime timeline, or assuming they didn't meet at the academy like they did in Into Darkness.
Yeah, I don't think they know each other yet, based on what Burnham tells Spock at the end of Disco season 2. But
I think it would be more interesting if they don't know each other. It would also be fun if Spock said, "You're the guy who messed up my test."
Anything else on the scene, or should we go ahead and talk about the B story territory?
Were y'all okay with the president coming in and sort of slyly assessing Burnham?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like what they're trying to do with her, like I mean, like, not to talk about like the real life political class too much. 'Cause I don't think anyone wants to hear me like go on that rant, but I do like that she's kind of that she's gonna have like this conflict with Burnham, and that she is like kind of sneaky and untrustworthy like that, and it might play into like her Cardassian heritage, or at least it's hinted that might have something to do with it. It's an interesting. It's what I said earlier. I like having those sparks. I think it's an interesting foil for Burnham to have. I'm certainly more invested in this conflict than Osira and Burnham having a kung fu fight at the end of season 3. So this is a much more engaging conflict here.
Well, I actually thought Osira raised a lot of interesting questions, and it was just the final the final round.
That was the conflict between Vance and Osira, which was good.
Yeah.
The conflict between Osira and Burnham was not good.
Was literally fighting on a turbo lift. Yeah.
It's like, I'm a good guy, you're a bad guy. Time to fight.
Yes.
All right. So, shall we move to Kaminar?
Sure.
I've always wanted to visit there.
On Kaminar, Saru is helping lead his people in the, I guess, joint Kelpian-Baiul Council, and they're trying to decide how to use the newly available dilithium. And we get to see more of Su'Kal. He's found a home. He tells Saru it's okay, if you want to go rejoin your friends and be in Starfleet and be back with Michael on the disco, go for it. I'm good here. I thought that was actually very thoughtful writing. Unlike, let's say, like when Worf goes to Deep Space Nine and the writers just kind of forget, oh yeah, he had a kid, Alexander, like what's going on with him? It's like here, like they actually are like a little thoughtful with this, and like they take the time to establish Su'Kal is going to be okay. Saru like did his duty, made sure he was okay. He's got a family. We don't see him. It tells us, doesn't show us, but either there's people taking care of Su'Kal. He seems to be like a functional member of society again. And we don't have to worry about Su'Kal. I liked that. And also just Bill Irwin, I think is the name of the actor who plays Su'Kal. Like he's the only other awesome Kelpian besides Doug Jones, because they're both such incredible like physical actors. You really have to have that physicality to come off, because you can't really express anything with your face. They're just doing everything with body language, but it's so seamless. So I like the interactions between Su'Kal and Saru, and also it was just cool to see like the Baiul and the Kelpians, being like a functional society. They're not trying to eat each other. They've come a long way.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me, was to see that that over that passage of time they had found a way of means of working together. I think Saru suggested that it was like not without its discomforting moments, so they clearly hadn't gotten past all the old issues. But yeah, I really liked that. I was a little sad to be reminded when I saw Su'Kal of what I thought a terrible plot point he had to be involved in, as the person whose sadness made the dilithium go boom. But I liked that scene because I liked Saru being able to turn loose, and I thought it was like a reasonably emotionally complex scene to have him acknowledging that he had kind of grown and forged new friendships, Su'Kal. And I want Saru back on the Discovery. I think he's an integral part who I still think I would prefer as captain.
Well, this episode tells us. Oh, I know. No, Michael's our captain. I don't want Captain Saru, but this episode.
Maybe you don't bother it, but I do.
I would be totally down for Captain Saru, because I think that might actually allow Michael more freedom to be the person she wants to be.
I think Michael in a more overt, like kind of Riker type role. I think she's different enough that it wouldn't feel like a clone or anything like that. But anyway, I'm not here to make a big case for it today.
I like the confidence of Saru when he's, when they introduce him as like, great elder, and when he walks into the room and he kind of has like this. I mean, he always has like a bit of a swagger, but I don't know.
He's not that old, is he? Are they just calling him elder because he comes from ancient?
He's like 1,000 years old because of time travel.
He's not actually 1,000 years old.
No.
But I guess that's
he's
all.
Seen some shit though.
Yeah,
he's seen
for sure.
some shit.
Some shit none of the others have seen.
Yeah, was he
the first Kelpian to shed his threat ganglia or whatever?
But they don't do the gangula anymore. They don't have Vahara anymore.
But was he the first?
Yeah. Yeah, he
Well, the first in recent memory. Presumably at some point in their evolution, they went through the Vorhori regularly before the others took over their culture and
He'd be kind of a historic figure, though.
He's the first to like leave their planet and go
Yeah.
do space shit, so that's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. So he's like Abraham Lincoln and Amelia Earhart all rolled in together or something.
But I liked his speech. I like the philosophy on it of like it was kind of like anti-isolationist, where he's like, yeah, like we could. I mean, he gets a little writerly and poetic, but he's like, we could curl inward and only focus inward like a leaf that's fallen from a tree, or we could, branch out and be part of our galaxy community and honor our own interconnective heritage that we have between the Baiul and Kelpie. Let's honor that and extend that to other worlds.
Yeah,
a little astronomy lesson.
I really liked the speech just because, and it resonates very well with the themes that we get when we're talking about the world route in the book, Book's story in this episode. But yeah, they does a reasonably good job of explaining that all this stuff about, individuality and separates between you and the other are just matters of scale and are meaningless when you start thinking about, well, maybe, you could be sitting here saying, well, we only care about the Kelpians on this continent, or we only care about the Kelpians on this planet, or, where do you draw the lines are arbitrary and just kind of there because of tradition. The lines are not there for any real practical reason in most cases. And he does a very good job of illustrating that these lines we have drawn are artificial and we're just keeping them because we're just honoring them because we've always had them, not because there's just a reason for those lines. And I appreciated that a lot. And I liked how it tied in with the world root ritual that we get in the other bit.
Saru's speech there is exactly the kind of thing you might want to hear from, say, a starship captain.
I also really love the line.
We know that they're looking for a captain for the Voyager, so let's just keep that in mind. We might have something at the end of the season. So,
I'd probably be okay with that. Although, okay, I want him captain of the show.
I also really like the line, "One can't have all the lives that one desires."
Yeah, that was a good one too. A little sad in its acknowledgement, but I thought that was an interesting line.
And it also dovetails with Michael's big question about no-win scenarios. Is there a way to save everybody? Is there a way to do all the things? According here, no, you cannot do all the things. You cannot have all the path. You cannot have all the. There is no such thing as a no lose scenario either. There's always something opportunity cost that is given up when you pick one course of action.
Sukal tells Saru, you can have balance. You can serve our people and also serve Starfleet. And so that's the episode telegraphs to us that Saru will be coming back to Starfleet.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, I think Saru's story did a wonderful job of kind of laying out the broad themes of the episode of the story, and perhaps the themes for the whole season. Perhaps, I don't know.
Well, are y'all ready to talk about Quajon?
Yeah, let's round it out.
All right, Dave, tell us what's going on there.
So, Book returns to his homeworld to celebrate a coming-of-age ceremony for his nephew Leto. But what should be a happy time turns into what is surely the worst day of Book's life, when a gravity wave devastates the planet, killing his family and everyone else on Quajon.
Yeah, so they have this ceremony where you have to get sap out of a tree, and they talk about the world root thing, which I don't know. I thought some of this was a little silly, but Brian, you seem to like it and found some meaning in it.
It's the same thing about
where
do you draw the line between individuality and stuff. We have all these cultural things about, oh, well, I'm an individual and society is something separate and I don't have to worry about that person over there because they don't affect me. But in fact, what those people over there are doing are going to affect me, and I'm going to affect them, and everything is interconnected. And the idea that apparently this tree is connected to all the other trees on the planet, I guess, or maybe I'm reading too much into the ritual. But even if it's not literally true, it's very much symbolically true about how all life interacts with each other. And so yeah, it certainly rode the line of hippy dippy, but especially with Saru's speech to kind of tie it all together and show how these ideas connect to the larger galaxy and stuff. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Blue Spark over in the comments makes a good point. For a coming age ceremony, this kid's only 6.
Yeah, apparently he's the age of consent. I don't know what's going on with
God, I hope not.
Yeah, and I don't really like I don't know if it's like the same kid who played him in season 3. It might be, because I didn't really like his acting then either. Which is, I mean, it's hard for kids this young to perform in a live action acting, or I guess any type of acting. But I like seeing Kahim again, the Book's brother, the father of the nephew. I liked him. Even though I remember pointing out in season 3, it bothered me they had such radically different accents. Where Book has this Cockney accent, and then we have this like strong like Latino, I think, pretty sure Mexican accent. But yeah,
I felt like what Santo said in the comments about the scene rings most true to me, is that this scene was there to make us care for the planet before it got wrecked.
Yes, because
and it didn't work for me.
I was thinking that when I watched, I was like, oh yeah, I bet Dave complains about this. But I liked it. I like that his world gets kryptoned.
I had complained about it before, I think, because I felt like there was only like about 10 people on the planet.
Right.
And I just never it never felt like a society, and like I just saw people occasionally walk into big groves of trees. So unfortunately, that particular emotional impact was not felt very well by me.
I care deeply about Book, so regardless of how much I care about his planet, which I was on a pretty positive note because I like the tree ritual, I cared a whole bunch because I felt bad for Book, and I knew this, even if I didn't care about the damn planet, Book, a guy I do care about, is going to feel absolutely torn to pieces by this, and that's awful. Also, the moment that moon blows up when he's flying out into space,
yeah, that was so
like
the visuals of like the birds not being able to fly, when like the birds are like falling, like that was kind of disturbing. And then just the seamless transition from that to space to turn around, and the way that you see like that gravitational wave, like that modern black hole depiction type of the lensing, the distortion around the moon, and the way that it explodes. Yeah, that all looks so spectacular. Is it like literally, as in like spectacle? It looks so spectacular that like that really sold that to me. And then the emotional impact for me came at the end when we see David Ajala's reaction, when he seems so heartbroken. And then the part that like really made like my heart sink was seeing, because she just has like the most expressive face in the world. I comment on that all the time. But when we see Sonequa Martin Green, she is reacting to the guy that she loves reacting to the tragedy, and so I reacted to her reaction to his reaction. So that's when it, like, the emotional weight of it really hit me.
That's the chain of command, Father.
Yeah.
The chain of command is the chain I go and whip your ass with.
Whoa, this got weird.
That's from Firefly. That's what Jane said one time.
But yeah, the birds are dying. Oh, that's really creepy. That's weird. We've got a big problem. Oh, the moon's exploded. That escalated quickly. I mean, that was just a new. I guess I was slightly surprised that Book was so chill. Was shocked to find his world was in such bad shape. If you blow up the moon, you're pretty much guaranteeing something way beyond a dinosaur level extinction event on the planet.
That's how people are with tragedy, though. Like, they don't.
Yeah, it's like shock sets in and you don't quite react fully.
I'm only going to talk about this because I know that she'll never listen to this, but I mean, that happened to me with someone that I was in love with and cared about deeply, who's was very well educated with medical stuff, was a nurse, and was dealing with like a mom dying of cancer, and was like, yeah, like it, it's clear to me, is like, oh yeah, like your mom's not gonna live much longer. But she was in like a state of denial where she was like, yeah, like I think my mom only has like a few months left, and I was thinking more like, no, I think your mom only has a few weeks left, and that unfortunately turned out to be the case. It was like, yeah, like she should have understood that, but just your brain doesn't want to accept those things. Like when things are like too emotionally tolling, your brain has like built-in resistance. Like this is too disruptive for me to think about this, so I'm gonna subconsciously ignore it. That's like an actual phenomenon that happens.
Yeah. I mean, he had just been banged all around the ship, and apparently the ship flew home on automatic, or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he might not have really quite pulled together everything he'd seen before that, and might not even know how much of that was a bad dream and how much of that actually happened.
That haunted look on his face and that still frame, Father, is a really good job with the screen cap, is what I'm saying to you.
And there's some great book stuff coming up soon. Is all I'll say on that.
Excellent. I was gonna make a really bad Quay John, more like Quay Gone joke, but I feel like I'm too sad now to make it.
I like your half joke, Brian. As someone who is heartless about that final scene, I will cackle at it.
Dave, I think that you like book though, right? Didn't you end up liking?
I do. I think I'll probably feel it more when the moment has time to breathe.
And maybe
if there's some follow up.
A big Superman fan, like outside of Star Trek, Superman's even with Star Trek included, he's like my favorite fictional character of all time. So like having like the last of your kind, like your whole world is gone type of thing. Like that's a lot of emotional baggage for a character to carry around, and can be compelling.
Yeah, I'm ready to see what they do with it. I think the after effects will be more interesting to me than the triggering incident.
Do you ever think about that? Do you ever think about like, what if you got pulled off Earth and Earth was destroyed and you were like the last of your kind alive? I think about it like what if I like?
It's such a weird, like when you were saying the thing about Superman, I was like, this is if you're a refugee, I think you would be able to relate to it on a level, but otherwise it's pretty hard for me to kind of imagine being the last of anything.
Like I think about like, what if I was like the last Texan, and I have to explain like to aliens about like what it's like to like eat barbecue in the middle of a bluebonnet field under the shade of a pecan tree while the armadillos and the horny toads fleck among you.
I think you'd like doing that, Father.
Yeah, I think I would too.
As a kid, my first introduction to that idea was reading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. At an age that was young enough that I got so few of the jokes that I thought it was a drama, an adventure drama, and not just an outright satire. But I remember Arthur Dent trying to come to terms with the world being gone in the novel, and they spent some time on that. But I am really glad this show is back. I love this show. I'm excited. I feel like we hit the ground running, so I'm hoping for good things in the future.
Yeah. Well, any final thoughts before we talk about the Gorn Eggs?
Because Discovery is often a roller coaster for me, I'm just hoping for, I don't know, do you hope for it to be rising or falling? I guess what's the fun part of when things are roller coasters? I guess the fall. I hope so. I hope there's more exciting roller coaster falls to come. I hit a couple rises in this episode that made me a little nervous that it might go off the tracks. But I am used to that in my Discovery assessments. So right now I'm holding onto the bars of the car, and as always, hoping for a good time before it crashes.
Santi Santo says in our live audience, "Bye, Quajon, no more free pilots for future spore drives." So yeah, that's true. Without all these empaths, who's going to be driving the spore drives? But perhaps we'll find out. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and go into the Gorn Egg section of our show. That's where I point out all of the Easter eggs, in-jokes, and continuity connections that I found worthy of mention in these episodes. Starting off on Prodigy, we do have a very traditional Klingon bird of prey class. I crashed on the plane. I guess that's the Burrell type bird of prey. On that ship, they're eating some, I guess, preserved gok, the Klingon worm dish. The sword that they're playing with is a Klingon mek'leth. We first saw that in the DS9 episode Way of the Warrior. And then the chase between the Rev 7 and the PRODIGY was very visually similar to the chase between the Vengeance and the Enterprise in Star Trek Into Darkness. And as for Discovery, when Burnham and Book are fleeing the butterfly people, she mentions, why don't you have a hologram goldfish instead of a cat as a pet? I think that might have been a reference to Livingston, the fish that might have been a hologram in Picard's Ready Room in Star Trek The Next Generation. Stamets mentions Romulan whiskey. Romulan whiskey was first brought up on the first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, so there's a connection to Lower Decks in Disco. And in the next episode, there's another reference to something from recent Star Trek in the next episode, so be on the lookout for that. In the cadets at Starfleet HQ, we can actually see in the background there is a Ferengi cadet. You don't get a good look at him; you just see his silhouette. But it's the redesigned Ferengi. I mentioned earlier that President Relic has Bajoran, human, and Cardassian heritage. So a little bit of, that's some DS9 representation, I guess, of some Cardassian Bajoran blood. The Archer space station, obviously named after Captain Archer, who may or may not have been the first president of the Federation. We also hear Dennis McCarthy's Archer's theme, I think is what it's actually called. But yeah, it plays over the end credits in Enterprise. And what should have played over the opening title sequence of Enterprise, instead we got like a terrible Faith of the Heart song, which probably contributed to that show being canceled early. But the ship that Bryce is consulting on, and the reason why we have to have Lieutenant Christopher substituting, is the USS Curry. I'm going to assume that's named after Dan Curry. He was the VFX producer back in Berman era Star Trek, worked on all of the Berman era shows.
And not the scientist, not the physicist.
Oh, Madam Curry.
Yeah,
yeah, it might have been her. Actually, when I hear Curry, I think of Dan Curry or Tim Curry. But yeah, you're right. That's probably what it was.
Wasn't her name Marie? Right. Are you talking about Marie Curie?
Yeah.
Or yeah, that's Curry. That was Curie.
Yeah, Curie. But I don't know. I don't know the spellings on any of the stuff we're talking about. So.
No, this was the Curie.
Okay.
I don't know. You're confusing me.
I'm confusing me.
Let's talk about Nahus. Let's talk about Nahus. His species got a name. It's the Ekazanum. It's hard to remember how to say it, but he's the same species as that little girl in the Picard short trek Children of Mars that was being bullied at school and her mom blew up on Mars.
Yeah.
And then in Michael Burnham's Ready Room, we see a Vulcan Kirshara on her desk. That contains, that's like the Vulcan Bible, that pyramid-looking thing. It contains like the teachings of Surak. So a little bit of her Vulcan upbringing represented in the Ready Room. Okay. I like it. So we're not going to do any subspace transmissions because this was a long show. We had 2 episodes to talk about, but thank you everyone who was here with us. And next week we'll be talking about Disco Season 4, Episode 2, titled Anomaly. That episode title kind of irks me for 2 reasons, but I'll get into that next week. In the meantime, though, everyone should, if you're watching this live now on Friday night, hop on over to the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. There's going to be an After Dark show over there. And I also want to mention that earlier today, I was invited to a guest on the Untold Trek podcast. So that was a lot of fun. I was there with some other great Star Trek podcasters, just talking about what it is like creating Star Trek podcast content. And I'm told that will be released on Thursday. So everyone go check out the Untold Treks podcast, also part of the Trek Sphere network, just like us. Otherwise, we'll be back live next week, Friday at 7 p.m. with only 1 episode to talk about. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. and follow Fathery on Twitter at Tex-Trek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.